Hi, I'm Liz Thompson, 27 years old. Been married for 5 years with my husband James, who's 30. We have a little boy named Jack, he's 4. I used to work full-time, but now I'm part-time at the same job. James won me over with his determination, and that's how we ended up together. When James and I were dating, he was really sweet, but after we got married, he became controlling, like he thought he didn't need to make an effort anymore. He's super lenient with his younger sister, Jennifer, who's almost 20. Even though there's a big age gap, he spoils her rotten. Before we got married, I got along fine with her, but things changed. Jennifer started showing up at our place all the time, and James would drop everything to cater to her. It's like I'm just a roommate, and she's the queen of the castle. She never brings anything when she comes over and acts like it's totally normal to ignore me. As usual, James invites Jennifer to join us for dinner, even though it was just supposed to be the three of us. She accepts without hesitation, saying that's why she came. I quietly remind James that there's only enough food for 3, but he insists I give my portion to Jennifer since she's here. He even suggests I should always prepare extra in case she shows up unexpectedly. Jennifer apologizes to me, but it feels more like she's happy James is on her side. James scolds me for not being more accommodating to his sister. Feeling frustrated, I make something for myself and join them at the dining table. When Jennifer sees me, she asks James to have a private conversation, excluding me and my son from the table. This isn't the first time I've had to move Jack's meal elsewhere and eat separately. After they finish eating and I start cleaning up, I notice James and Jennifer chatting on the couch, leaving the dishes for me to clean. It feels like they see me as a maid, ignoring both me and my son. I sigh and begin cleaning up, getting ready to bathe Jack. As I approach them, James asked me to get a piece of strawberry sponge cake from the bakery downtown for Jennifer. It was nearly 8 p.m., and I knew it was time to bathe Jack and put him to bed. When I explained this, Jennifer complained to James, saying she really wanted the cake and that skipping Jack's bath for one day wouldn't hurt. James started getting angry, knowing the argument would persist until I agreed. Reluctantly, I agreed to go to the bakery. The bakery was about to close at 9 p.m., so I hurried to get ready, knowing I could make it in time. As I prepared, I overheard James and Jennifer talking loudly, criticizing me for being inflexible and questioning why James married me. Jack wanted to come along, so we decided to go together. As I stepped out, James shouted that we'd get a divorce if I defied him again, and Jack, though young, looked concerned. Trying to hold back my tears, I asked Jack what kind of cake he wanted. His eyes lit up as he said he wanted a cake with lots of apples. We chatted happily about cake on the way, momentarily forgetting the hurtful words. When we reached the cake shop, it was almost closing time. I bought 2 slices of strawberry sponge cake and 1 slice of the fruit-covered cake Jack wanted, though the options were limited. Back home, I served James and Jennifer their cake slices and put one for Jack on a plate, heading to the dining table. Jennifer remarked that Jack's cake looked better, and surprisingly, James swapped it with hers. When Jack protested, Jennifer ignored him and ate his cake. James justified it by saying he bought it with his money, dismissing Jack's right to choose. I was furious and confronted them, but James threatened divorce again. Jack stopped crying, but his worried look broke my heart. After a moment's thought, Jack began eating the strawberry shortcake that Jennifer was meant to have. "Mommy, this cake is delicious. I'm glad I got this one," he said, trying to mask his discomfort. It was distressing to see 3 adults subjecting a young child to such a situation. When Jennifer reached for Jack's cake, I quickly intervened, suggesting we eat in another room. I wanted Jack to enjoy his cake in peace. James protested, saying it was fine for Jennifer to have a bite, but I ignored him and took Jack to the other room. There, watching Jack savor his cake, I felt a sense of relief. Afterward, we bathed together, ignoring James and Jennifer, and cuddled up in Jack's bed. The next morning, Jennifer had already left when I woke up. As I prepared breakfast, I heard Jack crying and found his porcelain piggy bank A gift from my father, broken with the money missing. Jack always said goodnight to it, as he did last night. I suspected James knew something about it. And when I asked, he admitted Jennifer broke it for money without remorse. As I comforted Jack, tears streamed down my face. It was heartbreaking to see James prioritize Jennifer over Jack's well-being. His callousness pierced me, and the mix of sadness and anger engulfed me. James, unmoved by our tears, complained about feeling gloomy in the morning, leaving me shattered. I couldn't hold back my frustration any longer and confronted James. Don't you see how wrong this is, making Jack cry like this? It was the first time I spoke out in anger. I never wanted Jack to witness marital discord, but I couldn't contain myself anymore. James didn't respond. Instead, he stormed off to the bedroom and returned with divorce papers, thrusting them at me. "If you're not happy with me, let's end it," he said before leaving for work. Jack had never cried over anything involving James and Jennifer before, but since last night, he had been inconsolable. I, too, had reached my breaking point. "Jack, let's take a break today and skip daycare, okay?" I suggested. Jack cheered, thrilled at the idea of spending the day with me. "Mommy's the daycare teacher today, right?" he said, his face beaming as he nestled on my lap, looking up at me with pure joy. I marveled at how much patience a young child like Jack must have. So we made a pact to spend the day playing to our heart's content, releasing all that bottled-up patience. I knew taking the day off work would be inconvenient, but I believed it was the best thing for Jack. After explaining the situation, I managed to get some time off. We spent the morning at the park, playing until we were exhausted, then returned home for lunch. Jack seemed unusually tired and cuddled up to me like a little baby, falling asleep on my lap. Normally, he naps on the couch alone, but today he wanted to be close to me. Instead of doing housework during his nap, I decided to cherish this special moment, finding solace in watching Jack sleep peacefully. Suddenly, I heard the front door unlock, much too early for my husband James to be returning. Instinctively, I grabbed a nearby bag and swiftly hid in the bedroom closet, holding Jack close. As I listened intently, I recognized the familiar voice of the intruder. It was Jennifer. She seemed to be searching for something, muttering in frustration. Why does she have a key? What is she looking for? I wondered anxiously. Peeking out from the closet, I observed Jennifer's movements and listened to her murmurs. After rummaging through various items, she made a phone call, expressing her inability to find whatever she was searching for. Mentioning bro, presumably James, she eventually left, locking the door behind her. The mystery of what Jennifer and James were seeking lingered in my mind. I carefully laid sleeping Jack on the bed and tried to make sense of what had transpired. Perhaps James and Jennifer were searching for something belonging to me, but I couldn't fathom what it could be. The whole situation left me feeling like James was a stranger, filling me with fear. Hastily, I packed Jack's things into the bag I had grabbed earlier. Just as I finished, Jack stirred awake. "Jack, let's go to Grandpa's house," I said, taking his sleepy hand. We hurried to the station and caught the train to my parents' home, just 2 stops away. Arriving unannounced, my parents were surprised to see us. Once Jack was home, he happily engaged with our family dog, bringing a sense of normalcy to the unexpected visit. As we discussed what had happened with my parents, I shared my feelings of fear and explained the situation. I speculated that Jennifer might have been searching for my banking card for my single days, and my parents agreed it was a possibility. You see, I used to run a successful online shop for handmade goods back then, which later expanded with the help of my friends in the same business. Even after getting married and having Jack, I continued to manage the business part-time from home, with my friends overseeing its day-to-day operations. Surprisingly, I hadn't told my husband that I'm still the president of the company, although he knows about my previous success in starting a business when I was single. I'm still employed at my company, but I've kept it hidden from my husband. He believes I've stepped down from my role as president and now work part-time. There's a reason for my secrecy. After we decided to marry, I learned he spends his entire salary with no savings. He expected me to quit and become a full-time homemaker, offering only $300 for groceries. I couldn't agree to this. After heated discussions, we compromised on me working part-time. But that wasn't all. He had me sign a legal document, limiting my claims to marital assets, making me feel financially trapped. Even after our child was born, I only received money for groceries, while I covered clothing and daycare expenses. My compliance may have led him to believe I still have savings from my single days, explaining why they're searching for my old banking card. Furthermore, I've been quietly saving for our child by diverting a portion of my salary to a separate account. It's clear they're after the banking card for financial reasons. There's no other reason for those siblings to be searching, but I'm cautious with my valuables, like my banking card. So even if Jennifer or my husband search, they won't find anything. The bigger issue is Jennifer having a key and unrestricted access to our home, a situation my husband seems fine with. My father suggested keeping my banking card at our family home, so I followed his advice and secured it in our family safe. However, he raised another concern. Why is he so desperate for money? While discussing this with my parents, Jack approached us tearfully, admitting he had broken the piggy bank from my father and failed to save money in it as promised. My father was furious, his face turning red with anger. My father was on the verge of calling my husband to express his anger when my mother intervened. Let's confirm if the banking card is their real objective, she advised. Acting hastily without evidence could backfire, especially considering my husband's casual mention of divorce. He might exploit the situation, painting us as the wrongdoers to gain leverage in a divorce. So we decided to record their conversation to uncover their true intentions and consulted our family lawyer, a longtime friend of my father. Once home, I began preparing dinner as my husband arrived. I discreetly started recording on my phone, placing it face down. As expected, his first question was about the banking card's whereabouts. When I pressed for his reason, he evaded the question, growing frustrated when met with silence. My sister's in trouble, so hand over all your part-time earnings, he demanded. I refused, explaining I was saving for our child. In response, he pulled out a signed divorce paper from his bag and thrust it at me. You can't even manage without me, yet you're arrogant. It's fine not to save for our child anymore, he sneered, implying his sister took precedence over Jack. Without another word, he left me stunned. I halted my dinner preparations, stashed the divorce papers in the bag I'd readied earlier at my parents' house, and took Jack's hand, heading for the front door. If you leave now, don't bother coming back. I mean it, my husband warned. I don't want to return to a house where Jennifer can come and go freely, he added. With that, I left the familiar confines of our home. My husband bombarded me with calls and emails, all of which I ignored as I made my way to my parents' house. There, I played the recorded conversation for my parents and showed them the divorce papers my husband had handed me. They asked what I wanted to do. I admitted I'd reached my limit of patience and love, but Jack's well-being was my primary concern. My parents suggested divorce might spare Jack further emotional harm, but they also acknowledged the potential for new wounds. Lost in contemplation, Jack mentioned he was hungry, prompting my mother to whip up his favorite meal, hamburgers. She had anticipated our arrival and stocked up on ingredients accordingly, ready for us to return home at any moment. Tears streamed down my cheeks uncontrollably. I couldn't contain them. Jack's delighted reaction to the hamburger was heartwarming. I wish Grandma could make these every day, he beamed, sharing his joy with my mother. That's because each bite is filled with love, she responded tenderly. Then, Jack fed me a piece, insisting it was filled with love and urging me not to cry. It was too much. I cried even harder, seeing Jack's concern for me. My father intervened, telling Jack these were tears of joy because I was so happy with his sweet gesture. He explained it gently, shielding Jack from any worry. Then my mother hugged Jack, moved by his innocence. I glanced at my father, noticing his struggle to hold back tears, his emotions mirroring mine. When I remarked on the beauty of family, Jack surprised me. Dad says his family is just Jennifer, but my family is Grandma and everyone else, he said, drawing a contrast. My father agreed, emphasizing our bond. Then, with a playful gesture, he asked if we wanted to be a family forever, lifting our spirits with his humor. Reflecting on our joyful meal, I realized it had been too long since we had relaxed together like this. It was a moment of clarity. I needed to proceed with the divorce. I explained my decision to Jack slowly, fearing his reaction. Surprisingly, he seemed relieved, finding solace in staying with the family. Even our older dog, back at my parents' house, received a warm embrace from Jack, who declared him his little brother. With clarity and determination, I knew what had to be done next. It was time to take action. The next day, I made arrangements to meet with my father's friend's lawyer to discuss my situation and finalize my decision to divorce. That night, Jack opted to sleep with my father and our faithful dog, Max. Meanwhile, I shared a bed with my mother, reminiscing about childhood stories until we both drifted off to sleep. The following morning, I reluctantly powered on my phone to find an overwhelming number of missed calls and emails from James, over 200 in total. His messages oscillated between harsh criticisms and desperate pleas for forgiveness, leaving me unsure of his true intentions. With a heavy heart, I decided to switch off my phone once more. In the afternoon, my lawyer arrived, and we delved into the details of my situation, reaffirming my resolve to proceed with the divorce. After thorough discussions, we officially signed the necessary paperwork, and my lawyer assured me he would meet with James the following day. 2 days later, the lawyer returned to my parents' house, and I eagerly inquired about the outcome. To my surprise, it transpired that Jennifer had a severe shopping addiction and frequented male strip clubs, borrowing a substantial sum of money from loan sharks with James as her guarantor. Their plan was to utilize my savings to repay the debt. When repayment was delayed, James confessed but expressed his desire for reconciliation, hoping for Jack and me to return. However, I remained steadfast in my decision to divorce, having already initiated the legal process. James, distraught, asked the lawyer if I could marry someone else. Despite his reluctance to let go, the lawyer affirmed my freedom to pursue future relationships. It was a difficult moment, witnessing James's emotional breakdown as he grappled with the reality of our impending divorce. He finalized the agreement by signing a promissory note to pay Jack $500 in child support each month. With that, the lawyer deemed the matter settled. Later, I received a call from my ex-husband. Our conversation brief but poignant. His once vibrant voice now sounded subdued, speaking with an air of calmness. It dawned on me that he may have believed financially binding me would deter me from seeking divorce, even if I grew to resent him. He confessed to always prioritizing Jennifer, his younger sister, out of a sense of brotherly duty ingrained since childhood. However, he now acknowledged this as a mistake, admitting his jealousy towards Jack, feeling as though I had been taken away from him, despite once loving our son. When he informed me that he and Jennifer had repaid her debts and expressed his intention to reconcile, pleading for me not to remarry, I firmly asserted that my love for him had faded, and there was no chance of reconciliation. Our conversation ended with tears exchanged over the phone as I wished him happiness before he hung up. In the aftermath, I leaned on my parents for support, making arrangements to transfer Jack to a different daycare while reviving my career as a businesswoman. Unable to keep silent any longer, I disclosed everything to my in-laws, who were outraged by the betrayal and resolved to disown James and Jennifer. Now they lived together in a modest apartment, their once close sibling bond deteriorating under the strain of their circumstances. As for me, I've chosen to view their plight as a form of personal retribution.
I never thought I'd be a widow at 34, but here I am, Elise, sitting at my kitchen table at 7 a.m., trying to get my 7-year-old son ready for school while fighting back tears. It's been 8 months since the accident took Nathan from us, but sometimes it feels like yesterday. The morning light catches on the architectural drawings scattered across the table, painfully reminding me of his talent, which he lost when he fell during his structural survey. For months after Nathan's death, the paperwork and tears kept me awake, and every night I was in a daze. His unfinished design even appeared in my dreams. I honestly don't know how I would have made it through without Eleanor and Robert, my in-laws. They've been absolute angels, picking my son Oliver up from school daily so I can focus on continuing Nathan's work at the firm. I stopped by their place afterward to get him, and every single time I find him happily sketching alongside Robert, who patiently explains the principles of design that Nathan once mastered. "Eleanor, I can't really accept this," I said last week, pushing back the envelope she tried to slip into my purse, my fingers still stained with ink from redrafting Nathan's final project. "Elise, sweetheart, we want to help you," she insisted, her artist's eyes meeting mine with genuine warmth. "We know the insurance company paid well, but your family. Let us do this." She's right about the insurance. The company paid out $300,000 after Nathan's death. Between that and my job as a building designer, taking over where my husband left off, we're managing financially. But it's not about the money with Eleanor and Robert. It's about how they nurture Oliver's creativity and support my struggle to honor Nathan's legacy through his unfinished work. If only my own parents were half as supportive. My parents, Diana and Richard, have always made it clear that my older sister Vanessa was their golden child with her practical career in investment banking. Now they extend that same favoritism to her perfectly polished children over Oliver and his sketching. Last weekend was typical. Oliver was excited to see his grandparents, clutching his sketchbook of building designs, but within 20 minutes, Mom was complaining about his drawing. "Why does this building have these curved supports?" Oliver asked, pointing to a modern art piece in their living room. "Could a real building stand with shapes like that?" "Elise, can't you control him?" Mom sighed, rolling her eyes at the graphite smudges on the glass table. "He's always drawing and asking questions. Vanessa's children never give us this much trouble." Dad nodded, reaching for his tablet. "Here, Oliver, why don't you play some games instead? I downloaded new ones that kids at your cousin's school enjoy." But Oliver didn't want games. He wanted to understand, to create, to connect his ideas with the world. Meanwhile, Vanessa's 3 children sat absorbed in their phones, each displaying the same educational app their mother had featured in her perfect parenting Instagram post. I've learned to bite my tongue. Growing up as the artistic child in a family that valued financial success over creativity, I'm used to these comparisons. Now I stay silent when they praise Vanessa's parenting while criticizing my encouragement of Oliver's architectural interests. At least they help occasionally with Oliver when I have late meetings or if Eleanor and Robert are busy. It was supposed to be just another Tuesday dinner at my parents' house. The warning signs were there from the moment I walked in. Mom made my favorite risotto with wild mushrooms, which she usually only prepares when she wants something from me. Dad was unusually chatty, asking about my design projects, about Oliver, about everything really. They were building up to something. I just didn't know what. "So, Elise," Mom said carefully, arranging her risotto in an Instagram-worthy presentation, "we've been meaning to ask you something. How much was Nathan's life insurance payout?" The question hit me like a physical blow. I nearly choked on my water, my fingers tightening around the stem of my glass as I processed such a direct inquiry about something so intensely personal. Maybe it was the shock, or maybe I was just tired of keeping my grief locked away from my parents, but I answered honestly. "About $300,000, I said quietly, watching their expressions change. The silver serving spoon in Mom's manicured hand clattered against her designer plate. Dad's head snapped up so fast I thought he might strain a muscle. They stared at me like I'd just announced I'd won a prestigious architectural award, something they'd never shown interest in before. "Well," my mom said, putting down her utensils deliberately, "what are you planning to do with all that money?" I could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on me like the heavy beams in one of Nathan's structural designs. "I've invested most of it," I explained, trying to keep my voice steady as I traced the rim of my water glass. "It's for Oliver's future, his education and creative pursuits, maybe help him start his own design firm someday. Nathan and I always talked about it." "But that's years away," Dad interrupted. waving his hand dismissively as though brushing away his grandson's future. You should be thinking about the present, Elise, about yourself and your family connections. The way he said family connections made it clear he wasn't talking about Oliver. I knew that tone. It was the same one they used when they'd help Vanessa with her down payment on her showcase home in the exclusive neighborhood, or when they'd funded her elaborate wedding at the country club. You could do so much with that money now, Mom chimed in, leaning forward eagerly, her statement bracelet clinking against the marble tabletop. You could invest in promising opportunities and network with the right people who need support today, instead of saving it all for a creative future that may or may not happen in the distant future. I'm not discussing my financial decisions anymore, I cut her off, my voice sharper than the chef's knife hanging on my kitchen wall. The silence that followed was deafening. They both sat back, Dad's face clouding over with that familiar disappointment I'd seen so many times growing up when my art projects didn't win the right competitions. Mom pressed her perfectly glossed lips together in that thin line that always meant trouble was brewing. The rest of the dinner passed in tense silence, broken only by the gentle scraping of designer flatware against imported plates. I thought that would be the end of it. Knowing my parents, I expected them to give me the silent treatment for at least a month, excluding me from their social media posts. It's what they always did when I didn't conform to their vision of success. But to my surprise, my mom called just a week later. "We're having a family brunch on Sunday," she announced, her voice warm as if nothing had happened. "Vanessa and her children will be there too. You must come, darling." Something about her cheerful tone made me uneasy, but I agreed. When I arrived that Sunday, Vanessa was already there with her 3 dressed-up children, all absorbed in their matching tablets. As we sat down to eat, Vanessa started talking about rising private school tuition and how hard it was to maintain their lifestyle. "Everything is just so expensive now," she sighed, passing the potatoes. "Richard and I barely have enough for our social commitments anymore." As Mom dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, Vanessa cleared her throat and sat up straighter. "I've been thinking," she announced. "Elise and I should help Mom and Dad financially. I'll send them $500 every month. I wish I could do more, but you know how it is with 3 children in private education." She trailed off before turning to me. "But you, Elise, you should send them $1,000 monthly." "Excuse me?" I nearly choked. "Well, it makes sense," Vanessa pressed on. "You earn well with those design projects, and you only have 1 child. Plus, with your situation, you have that substantial extra income now." My blood boiled at her careful avoidance of mentioning Nathan's death directly. I wanted to scream that I was a widow, that I didn't have a partner's income anymore, that the money was meant for my son's future. But Mom was clapping her hands in delight, and Dad was beaming like he'd just made a successful investment. "Oh, girls," Mom exclaimed, "you don't know what this means to us." I sat there, torn between anger and disbelief. The words of refusal dissolved in my throat. I'd spent my whole life trying to earn their approval, and here they were, putting a price tag on it. "Fine," I heard myself say. "I'll do it." The first transfer hurt the most. $1,000 gone with a few clicks. I told myself it was worth it if it meant more family support with Oliver, but that fantasy quickly dissolved. "Mom, could you pick Oliver up from school today? Eleanor has an art exhibition, and I have a client presentation." "Oh, darling, I'm so sorry," Mom's voice crackled through the phone. "I've got such a migraine today. You know how sensitive I get when the weather changes." This became a predictable pattern. Every time I needed help with Oliver, there was an excuse. Mom was meeting clients. She was hosting her book club. Dad was networking. Meanwhile, the $1,000 left my account like clockwork every month. One frustrating Thursday, after Mom claimed she couldn't watch Oliver because of a charity committee meeting, I called Eleanor in desperation. "Of course we'll pick him up," Eleanor said without hesitation. "Robert's already heading to the school. He loves their conversations about building designs. Oliver's been sharing his ideas for a treehouse." I hung up and sat at my drafting table, fighting back tears. $1,000 a month bought me nothing but excuses from my own mom, while my mother-in-law canceled an important gallery meeting to help without asking for anything in return. December crept up on me that year, the holiday lights reflecting off the models Oliver and I had built together. We'd always spent Christmas at my parents' house despite my discomfort. The call came a week before Christmas. I was helping Oliver with his drawing when my phone lit up with Mom's picture. "Elise, sweetheart," she started, using that honeyed tone that always preceded something unpleasant. "About Christmas Eve, we've decided to do something different this year. We're having a sophisticated party. No children allowed." The pencil I was holding snapped between my fingers. "What?" "It's just that we want to do something more elegant this year," Mom continued. "You know, fine wines, intelligent conversation, networking opportunities." "But it's Christmas," I protested, moving away so Oliver couldn't hear. "What am I supposed to do with Oliver? He's been working on handmade ornaments all week." "Oh, that's simple," she replied dismissively. "You can leave him with Eleanor and Robert. You'll arrive around 7? Maxwell's associates will be there, some interested in architectural design." After hanging up, I stared at Oliver, unaware his grandmother had just excluded him from Christmas. My heart ached watching him concentrate, his tongue sticking out just like Nathan's used to. I spent the next week weighing options. Celebrating without Oliver felt wrong, but skipping family Christmas seemed like burning a bridge Mom would never let me forget. Finally, I drafted a compromise. Leave Oliver with Eleanor and Robert briefly, make an appearance to exchange gifts, then escape back to celebrate properly with my in-laws and son. On Christmas Eve, I pulled up to my parents' house alone, a collection of gifts in hand. The driveway was lined with luxury cars, more than usual for our family gatherings. I opened the door, and the world seemed to tilt sideways. The house was packed with relatives, but that wasn't what stopped me. There, running through the living room with paper crowns, were Vanessa's 3 children. Near the Christmas tree, I spotted my cousin Amanda's children helping themselves to cookies. More children appeared. My cousin William's twins, my cousin Rebecca's teenager. I stood frozen, the gift bag hanging limply as reality constructed itself in my mind. This wasn't an adults-only party. It was a gathering where only my son wasn't welcome. Aunt Catherine was the first to spot me. "Elise, darling, where's little Oliver? Don't tell me he's not feeling well on Christmas Eve." Before I could answer, my cousin Michael approached. "Yeah, where's our budding architect? James has been excited to show him the building set we got him." More relatives gathered, all asking the same question. Where was Oliver? Each inquiry felt like a compass piercing my heart. Through the crowd, I spotted Mom in the kitchen, arranging canapes as if everything was normal, as if she hadn't excluded her only grandson from Christmas. "Excuse me," I managed to say, navigating past my relatives. I led her into the study, away from the party. "You told me this was an adults-only gathering," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "You specifically told me not to bring Oliver. So why are all the children here?" Mom straightened her sweater. "Well, that's different." "Different how?" "Those children know how to behave at sophisticated gatherings. They understand social expectations." I stared in disbelief. "Socially appropriate? Oliver is one of the most thoughtful children I know. His teachers praise him. Eleanor and Robert always say." "Oh, Eleanor and Robert," Mom interrupted. "They indulge him, encourage all those drawings and questions. The other children fit in better here." As if on cue, a commotion erupted from the dining room. Vanessa's youngest son had grabbed Pate and was flinging it at his sister, splattering her dress as she shrieked. I raised an eyebrow. Yes, I can clearly observe their superior social graces. Mom's face hardened. "That's just playful holiday spirit, but when Oliver sketches during dinner, that's inappropriate." "I'm leaving," I announced. "I'm returning to my son." Mom shrugged. "Fine, leave if you must, but place your gifts under the tree first." Something snapped inside me. Before I could second-guess myself, I walked into the center of the living room and cleared my throat loudly. "Several people have asked why I'm alone tonight," I began, my voice strong. "I'm here alone because Mom told me this was an adults-only party. I was told not to bring Oliver." "What?" Aunt Catherine's voice cut through the silence. "But all the children are here. We weren't told about any ban on children." Mom stepped forward, flushed. Elise, this isn't the time. This is exactly the time, I continued. There wasn't a ban on children. There was a ban on one child. My son. The room erupted in murmurs. I saw shocked faces and disapproving looks directed at my parents. But that's not even the worst part, I added. While my son isn't good enough for Christmas, I'm apparently good enough to send my parents $1,000 every month. And Vanessa supposedly sends $500. Maxwell's head snapped up. Wait, what? What $500? Vanessa's composure cracked as Maxwell turned to her. I never actually sent any money, she stammered. They asked me to say I was so Elise would agree to help them financially. Aunt Barbara's voice rang out. You defrauded your own daughter out of thousands while treating her son like an inconvenience? That's unconscionably low. I raised my hand for silence. From this moment forward, I will no longer be financing your lifestyle, and I won't be maintaining any relationship with you or Vanessa. Without waiting for their response, I walked out, leaving the gifts by the door. The sound of it closing behind me felt final, like the end of a chapter that should have finished long ago. Mom shrugged. Fine, leave if you must. But place your gifts under the tree first. Something snapped inside me. Before I could second-guess myself, I walked into the center of the living room and cleared my throat loudly. Several people have asked why I'm alone tonight. I began, my voice strong. I'm here alone because Mom told me this was an adults-only party. I was told not to bring Oliver. What? Aunt Catherine's voice cut through the silence. But all the children are here. We weren't told about any ban on children. Mom stepped forward, flushed. Elise, this isn't the time. This is exactly the time, I continued. There wasn't a ban on children. There was a ban on one child. My son. The room erupted in murmurs. I saw shocked faces and disapproving looks directed at my parents. But that's not even the worst part, I added. While my son isn't good enough for Christmas, I'm apparently good enough to send my parents $1,000 every month. And Vanessa supposedly sends $500. Maxwell's head snapped up. Wait, what? What $500? Vanessa's composure cracked as Maxwell turned to her. I never actually sent any money, she stammered. They asked me to say I was so Elise would agree to help them financially. Aunt Barbara's voice rang out. You defrauded your own daughter out of thousands while treating her son like an inconvenience? That's unconscionably low. I raised my hand for silence. From this moment forward, I will no longer be financing your lifestyle, and I won't be maintaining any relationship with you or Vanessa. Without waiting for their response, I walked out, leaving the gifts by the door. The sound of it closing behind me felt final, like the end of a chapter that should have finished long ago. Sitting in my car, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app with trembling fingers. With a few precise taps, I canceled the monthly transfer to Mom's account. It felt like removing a structural flaw from a design I'd been struggling with for months. Suddenly, the whole building could breathe again. The drive to Eleanor and Robert's charming craftsman home seemed to exist in a strange architectural space, both eternal and instantaneous. When I pulled into their driveway lined with homemade luminaries, I could see Oliver through the warmly lit window, carefully helping Eleanor decorate gingerbread houses with intricate structural details. The sight of him, completely absorbed in creative joy and genuinely loved for his talents, brought tears to my eyes that blurred the festive lights. We spent the rest of Christmas Eve with Eleanor and Robert designing edible architecture, singing carols around Robert's old piano, and watching Oliver's eyes light up as he helped Eleanor arrange a miniature Christmas village with properly scaled buildings. This, I realized as I watched my son carefully position tiny structures with the same concentration Nathan used to show, was what family truly should feel like. The next morning, while Oliver was still asleep surrounded by the architectural building sets Santa had brought, my phone rang softly. It was Aunt Barbara. You should probably hear how everything unfolded after your dramatic exit last night, she said without social preamble. After you left, it was like watching a poorly constructed building finally collapse. Uncle David stood up and announced he couldn't remain in that house another minute. Then Aunt Catherine and Uncle James followed his lead. Pretty soon everyone was collecting their coats and children. I listened as she described how the relatives had departed en masse, not even bothering with the customary social niceties toward my parents. Some had apparently made deliberately audible comments about manipulative financial schemes and family disgrace as they walked out into the night. And Maxwell? I asked quietly, thinking of my brother-in-law's shocked expression. Oh, darling, he was absolutely furious. Gathered his children immediately, informed Vanessa he needed substantial time to reconsider their marriage, announced he was taking the children to his family's vacation home for the remainder of Christmas. Vanessa was completely falling apart, her perfect image shattered. Diana and Richard were attempting desperate reputation management, but the structural damage was already beyond repair. I could hear her take a deep, satisfied breath. I need you to understand, Elise, we're all firmly supporting you. What they did to you and Oliver, it's genuinely unforgivable and structurally unsound as a family design. After hanging up, I sat on the window seat of our partially renovated home, processing everything like reviewing a complex blueprint. My phone started lighting up with notifications, carefully crafted text messages from Mom, Dad, and Vanessa. They all contained variations of the same hollow architectural elements. We sincerely apologize. We were completely wrong. Please communicate with us. We can provide explanations. I read each message once with an architect's analytical eye, then archived them without responding, like flawed designs not worth saving. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a peaceful architectural flow. Oliver and I spent quiet, creative time with my in-laws, designing miniature buildings together, watching classic architectural films, and enjoying the simple authenticity of being with people who truly appreciated our creative spirits and unconditionally loved us both. Then, on New Year's Eve morning, the doorbell chimed throughout our home. Through the peephole, I saw my parents standing on my porch, clutching a large, elaborately wrapped package. "Elise, we know you're there," Mom called out, her voice muffled through the door. "Please, we simply want to talk." After a moment, I opened the door but stayed firmly in the threshold. They appeared diminished somehow, like a building that loses its imposing presence when viewed differently. "We brought this for Oliver," Dad said, extending the package. Through the paper, I could see the logo of an expensive electronics store. "He doesn't need it," I replied firmly. "Please, Elise," Mom stepped forward. "We recognize we were wrong. We're truly sorry about how we treated Oliver and the financial manipulation. And we want to make it clear," Dad added hastily, "this isn't about the money you were sending us. We truly feel terrible about everything." I studied their faces, searching for authenticity beneath the surface. "Are you sorry because you understand your actions were wrong or because everyone now knows what you did and won't speak to you?" They exchanged a glance, and in that brief look, I had my answer. "I think you should leave," I said quietly. "I don't believe you, and I don't trust you anymore." "But we're family," Mom protested, tears welling in her eyes. In the months that followed, I maintained my boundaries. I didn't answer their calls or texts. Vanessa tried reaching out too, but I blocked her number. The money I had been sending to my parents went into Oliver's education fund instead. The remarkable thing about removing toxic elements from your life is how much space it creates for better relationships. Aunt Barbara invited us for Sunday brunches. Uncle David welcomed us for garden parties where Oliver could share design ideas with his cousins. Everyone included him, asking about his interests and encouraging his questions. "Mom, why does Uncle David's garden pavilion have those angled supports?" Oliver asked one afternoon, sketchbook open. "Those are cantilevers, buddy," Uncle David answered, explaining load-bearing principles that had Oliver captivated and sketching eagerly. I watched my son flourish with the attention of family who wanted to understand his creative mind, not suppress it. He called Eleanor and Robert Grandma and Grandpa now, and they remained our foundation through every challenge life presented.
There is no way I can introduce my daughter with disabilities to my new husband. That would be so embarrassing.
As my niece cried and trembled, my sister drove the knife in deeper with her words.
You don't have a place here anymore. Just accept it and let your aunt take you in.
Laughing cruelly, my sister pushed her daughter away as if she were some burden, fully intending to chase happiness for herself alone. Her actions were so disgusting that I felt a surge of rage, as if my blood had begun to flow in reverse. If you don't want her, then I'll gladly take her as my own daughter. And I'll make absolutely sure she finds happiness. One day, my selfish sister will be so jealous of how happy she is, she'll regret everything. I'm Monica, a 30-year-old single freelance writer. I'm an independent spirit, and living as a freelancer, without bosses or corporate nonsense controlling me, this has been the best decision of my life. Because of that, I've never had any interest in getting married. I make enough money to support myself comfortably, and I was living a relatively happy single life, or at least I thought I was. Today, like any other day, I was glued to my computer screen, working on an article I had recently taken on. As I focused, my phone, which was sitting next to my laptop, suddenly vibrated with an incoming call. When the name Rachel popped up on the screen, I couldn't help but mutter, "Oh no." Her again. Like I was picking up something filthy, I hesitantly grabbed my phone. Lately, the one constantly pestering me with calls was my younger sister, Rachel. She's 28 now. 7 years ago, she had a child on her own and has been working hard as a single mother ever since. Or at least, that's what I thought. It turns out she's been living her life in a pretty selfish way. Her daughter, Holly, who is now 7, was diagnosed with a developmental disorder. She's had a tough time fitting in at school, and lately she hasn't even been attending. Desperate for someone to vent to, my sister started calling me every day, dumping all her frustrations about Holly on me. Of course, I had no desire to answer those calls. But if I ignored her, she'd just keep calling over and over, making it impossible for me to focus on work. So with no other choice, I finally picked up. The moment I did, my sister unleashed another rapid-fire rant about Holly. Hey, isn't Holly right there with you? Do you really have to complain so loudly?
It's fine. She's cleaning the bathroom right now. She can't hear a thing.
Oh, she's helping out. That's great.
She doesn't go to school, so it's the least she can do. After she's done with the bathroom, I'll have her clean her room too.
You don't have to pile so much on her. I mean, she's probably already struggling since she doesn't fit in at school. Maybe she should see a counselor or something.
Oh, shut up. I have work, you know. I'm barely holding it together, working my butt off to support the two of us. I don't have time to waste on Holly.
Rachel works at a bar in the neighborhood, mostly at night. No matter the job or the hours, raising a kid on your own while working is impressive. But maybe because she works nights, she never wakes up in the morning, lounges around all day, and never does any housework. The place is always a mess. Sure, Holly might have had trouble fitting in at school, but maybe being in that kind of environment didn't help either. And yet,
I've started making Holly do housework, so I finally have a little more breathing room. But there are still so many things she can't do. She's completely useless.
Hey, she's only 7. What are you saying? She might already be emotionally drained, and you're making her do all the housework on top of that.
Just shut up already. You don't even have kids. And besides, the reason Holly can't go to school is because she's just like you.
Excuse me. I was caught off guard by Rachel suddenly blaming me. What the hell is she talking about?
You've always been so selfish and carefree, doing whatever you wanted. Even now, you're just drifting around without getting married or having kids. The more I think about it, the angrier I get. Why should I be the one dealing with the consequences of you being a failure?
Isn't that a bit of a stretch?
No, it's not. If Holly had taken after me, she'd be well-adjusted, responsible, and loved by everyone at school. But because she turned out like you, I ended up as the mother of a kid who won't even go to school. This is the worst.
Rachel was ranting like she had just discovered a new excuse to avoid responsibility. I wanted to call her out that she might have had a kid, but she's still an unmarried mother herself. But saying that would only make things worse. I could handle being falsely accused, but the thought of Holly hearing all this from the other room made my stomach churn. If Rachel was forcing housework on her and making her listen to this kind of cruel talk every day, just imagining it made my chest tighten. Then suddenly, Rachel's tone brightened as she threw out a ridiculous suggestion.
Oh, I know. Monica, why don't you come over for a bit? Keep an eye on Holly. And if you get the chance, try to get her to go to school.
Me?
You're just as selfish and free-spirited as Holly, so maybe you can handle her. I work at night, so mornings are brutal for me. But you're a freelance, right? That means you have a flexible schedule, so you should help out. Right.
Rachel was tossing out her irresponsible ideas like they were brilliant. Just because I'm a freelance doesn't mean I'm not busy. She really only sees things from her own perspective. I was getting more and more worried about Holly, stuck living with a mother like this. Fine. I'll come by and check on her for now. I've been worried about her staying home alone while you're at work anyway.
Okay. Hurry up and get here. Honestly, I've always been annoyed that you get to make easy money without even going to an office. But I guess you're useful in times like this.
Rachel had always been this blunt. I was used to it by now. More than that, I was more concerned about Holly being neglected and burdened with housework. So, I headed straight to Rachel's house. Little did I know that my decision that day would only encourage Rachel's arrogance and set off a chain of events leading to complete disaster.
Oh, finally, you're here. Holly, Aunt Monica's here, so I'm heading out. Have some toast and jam and eat that. Don't even think about leaving the dishes unwashed. And when you're done, gather all the trash in the house and leave it by the front door. Oh, and before you take a bath, clean the toilet too.
The moment I stepped into Rachel and Holly's home, Rachel, while checking her heavy makeup in the mirror, started barking orders at Holly at a rapid pace.
Well, you're saying too much at once. I can't remember all that.
Holly was only 7 years old. Of course, she would react like that. But instead of understanding, Rachel clicked her tongue loudly in irritation.
You're seriously useless. You don't even go to school like you're supposed to. You can't even do housework properly. How much more worthless can you be? Your future's looking pretty damn bleak.
Hey, Rachel, that's way too harsh. You can't expect that level of responsibility from a 7-year-old. As I stepped in to defend Holly, who was already on the verge of tears, Rachel's face twisted into an even more annoyed expression.
Listen, like I told you before, you don't even have kids, so don't act like you know everything. If you feel so bad for her, why don't you help her yourself?
Look, I get that kids should help out a little, but housework is ultimately an adult's responsibility. And if you're really doing everything you can but still need help, you can ask me. But from what I see, Rachel, you're not even doing the laundry, are you? It looks like you're just dumping all the housework on Holly. Holly probably couldn't even reach the bottom of the washing machine, which was why Rachel hadn't made her do laundry. A messy pile of unwashed clothes sat in the corner, likely the ones Rachel and Holly had worn. The dishes stacked on the table were still dirty, and dust had collected in every corner of the room. Rachel wasn't doing anything. She was just making Holly struggle through chores she barely understood. When I pointed it out, Rachel's face turned bright red with rage.
Shut the hell up. I'm out there making money to support Holly, okay? I have to drink with customers, get wasted, and drag myself home. And now you're saying I have to do housework too? That's ridiculous. She doesn't bring in money. She doesn't go to school, so she should be doing everything in the house. Why don't you get that?
Just as I opened my mouth to argue back against Rachel's absurd rant, I suddenly heard a loud crash behind me.
Holly, what the hell did you do? This is the worst.
Sorry, the toaster was too heavy.
I turned around to see the toaster lying on the floor, bread and breadcrumbs scattered everywhere.
You useless brat. Wasting food like this. If it's not cleaned up before I get back, you're in big trouble.
Sorry.
Even though Holly was already crying, Rachel just kept yelling at her with a terrifying expression. Wait, Rachel. She didn't do it on purpose, and you can still shake off the bread and eat it. Besides, maybe cooking is still a bit too hard for Holly. You could just do it yourself or even get food delivered.
Are you seriously telling me to spend more time on Holly? She's the one who's messed up. So why the hell do I have to try harder?
Rachel suddenly shrieked hysterically, making both Holly and me freeze. Seeing our reaction, she scoffed, grabbed her bag, and stormed toward the door.
This is so damn frustrating. Listen up. You better have this mess cleaned up.
With that, she slammed the front door and left for work. I had suspected she wasn't really taking care of Holly, but I didn't think it was this bad. Holly, did someone say anything to Mom?
My teacher called. They talked for a while, and then Mom got really mad and said I didn't have to go to school anymore.
Holly answered while quietly picking up the breadcrumbs. Her teacher had probably called out of concern. And Rachel, just like now, had lost her temper. Watching my little niece wipe her tears with the back of her hand as she picked up the breadcrumbs like it was nothing, I felt my own eyes well up. So, I made toast for her, scrambled the last few eggs in the fridge, and put together a simple meal. As Holly ate, we talked, trying to get a better sense of what was really going on. According to what I learned from Holly, even before she was diagnosed with her disability, she struggled with her appearance and often felt out of place in class. On top of that, her naturally reserved nature made it even harder for her to fit in, leading to a pretty rough time at school. Her teacher, noticing her struggles, managed to call Rachel to the school for a discussion. But Rachel didn't like being given advice and ended up telling Holly she didn't have to go to school anymore. Oh, this is really bad. After making sure Holly took a bath and got ready for bed, I couldn't help but glance around at the messy room, deep in thought. If Holly stayed in this environment, her mental state would only get worse. She was already being deprived of an education. At this rate, she'll never be able to have a job in the future. There was no way I could just sit back and let that happen as her aunt. I decided that I'd step in and support her as much as I could while Rachel was out. Maybe if I took some of the burden off Rachel, she'd have more patience and be a little kinder to her daughter. So, starting the very next day, I began visiting Rachel's house right before she left for work, spending time with Holly. I cooked her meals, did the laundry and cleaning, helped her with her bath, and stayed with her until she fell asleep. Then, while waiting for Rachel to return, I worked on my laptop. It was exhausting, but as Holly started smiling more and more, all my fatigue melted away. And since I kept the place clean, Rachel must have found it easier to live in too. But still.
Do you think Mom's not coming home again today?
I don't know, I've been texting and calling her, but not long after I started taking care of Holly, Rachel stopped coming home even after work. She'd randomly show up once every 2 or 3 days, grab the clothes I had washed and folded, take some makeup, and leave again. Whenever I managed to catch her and ask where she was going, she'd just brush me off with, "Work's been crazy," like some overworked corporate employee. Maybe it's time for me to storm into her workplace and give her a piece of my mind? As I made my half-joking, mostly serious remark, Holly let out a small laugh. And just then, the front door swung open, and a cheerful voice rang out. "I'm home."
Mom, welcome back.
To Holly, Rachel was still her one and only mother. But Rachel barely acknowledged her daughter's excitement. Instead, she casually pulled a beer out of a convenience store bag, popped it open, and chugged it down.
I have some great news for you too.
Rachel beamed at us, clearly in a celebratory mood, while Holly and I exchanged confused looks. What's with this sudden visit? At least hear our update first. Holly finished all the worksheets her teachers sent over. She's been keeping up with her homework, and she's caught up academically, so.
Who cares about that boring stuff? It's not like it matters to me.
Wet. She had been so frustrated about Holly before, and now she just didn't care. Rachel, her lips perfectly coated in bright red lipstick, smiled triumphantly.
I have even bigger news. I'm getting remarried. My partner is one of my bar customers. He's loaded, and he's totally in love with me.
Holly and I just stared at her in disbelief. This was completely out of nowhere, and all I could think was, so this is what she's been doing instead of coming home? Was this really more important than Holly's efforts? I was at my limit with Rachel's selfishness. Getting remarried is fine and all, but what does he think about Holly? Did you even ask her how she feels about it? If not, there's no way I can support this.
What are you even talking about? Of course, I'm not taking Holly with me. That's a given.
Rachel's offhanded remark made the entire room fall silent. I couldn't even react right away. I just couldn't process what she had said. Before I could say anything, Holly spoke up first, her face pale.
Wait, Mom. Are you really getting married and leaving me behind? Why? We're family, aren't we?
Holly's voice trembled as she asked, but Rachel just clicked her tongue in annoyance.
Family? You gave up on school, so what right do you have to talk about family? Do you think I'd embarrass myself by introducing my new husband to a disabled dropout?
No way.
Holly's large eyes filled with despair, and tears began to fall down her cheeks. Seeing that, I couldn't help but lose my temper and shouted, "Hey!" But Rachel, lost in her own little fantasy world, just blinked at me with a clueless expression and said, "What? What's with that dumb look on your face? Is that really something you say to your own child? And by the way, mandatory education means it's the parent's responsibility to make sure their child goes to school. And Holly is a smart girl. If she had gotten the right support, she never would have ended up skipping school. But instead, you just dumped all the blame on her. I can't forgive you for that."
Yeah, whatever. You spent a little time with her, and now you think you know everything about raising kids. But hey, that works for me. I was already thinking of having you take Holly in. You can just keep playing mommy all you want.
Rachel wasn't even fazed by my anger. She just laughed and threw out a ridiculous proposal with that same carefree smirk. I was speechless. Then Rachel turned to Holly, who was still crying, and let out a mocking snort.
So what's it gonna be, Holly? I'm not taking you with me, and I'm canceling this apartment, so you won't have anywhere to go. Either follow Aunt Monica or end up homeless. Your choice.
Unbelievable. Absolutely disgusting. I couldn't believe this woman was my sister. She wasn't just a bad mother. She wasn't even human. Holly must have realized, too, that her mother was truly abandoning her. Her small hands, too tiny for her age, trembled as they grasped the edge of my sleeve.
Aunt Monica, please help me.
Of course, I'll help you. Without hesitation, I pulled Holly into a tight hug. You don't have to worry, Holly. I'm going to make sure you're happy. Hearing my words, Rachel burst into laughter and chugged the rest of her beer.
Good for you. This whole thing feels like a cheap soap opera. But hey, at least everyone's happy, right? Now that we've settled that, Make sure to plan your move-out date. I'm leaving this place by the weekend, so Holly needs to be gone by then too.
Forget the weekend. Holly's coming with me today. There's no way I'm leaving her with a toxic mother like you.
Starting your little pretending to be a mother routine already? Just so you know, no refunds if you get tired of it.
Rachel didn't even flinch at my outburst. Instead, she started humming a wedding song to herself while flipping through a bridal magazine she had apparently bought. What a nightmare of a mother. Holly, let's go. I took Holly's hand as she hesitantly looked back at her mother. Then, I gathered up the few belongings she had and left Rachel's apartment, taking Holly home with me. Even as Holly walked out of her life, Rachel didn't even glance our way. Instead, she just laughed, throwing her arms in the air. I'm finally gonna be happy now. Unbelievable. I don't even want to acknowledge someone like that as family. That was not exactly the case for Holly, who was trudging beside me, tears streaming down her face. No matter what kind of person she was, to a 7-year-old, she was still her mother. How deeply must Holly's heart have been wounded, being abandoned like that? It's okay, Holly. I may never be able to replace your mother. With all the love I can give, I'll fill your life with more happiness than the pain you've endured. I will never regret the decision I made that day. I held Holly's small hand tightly, as if sealing my vow to never regret the choice I made that day. 15 years passed in the blink of an eye since that awful day. Holly and I were living a life much happier than I had ever imagined. The first thing I did was plan a move to a rural town where Holly could grow up free and at ease. The countryside we settled in was where my parents, as well as Rachel and I, had our roots, a place I had known well since childhood. By chance, a small old farmhouse had gone up for sale, so I used my savings to buy it and move in with Holly. Since my job only required an internet connection, I had no trouble working remotely. The house had a small vegetable garden, and since I enjoyed working outdoors, I started growing seasonal produce to help with household expenses. And as for Holly, her new school was small, with a relaxed and nurturing atmosphere. Surrounded by friendly classmates, she quickly came to love going to school. After school, she would either run around outside with her friends or help me in the garden. As those peaceful days passed, the emotional scars left by her mother slowly began to heal. Now Holly is 22. She graduated from college this summer and is now working as a freelancer, just like me. Sometimes she has projects that require her to go to New York. When that happens, she drives herself to the station and takes the train into the city. And every time, I can't help but tear up, thinking, I can't believe how much she's grown. I'm so happy. At 45, I may seem like a lonely woman with no romantic prospects to the outside world. But there's nothing more precious to me than the joy of living with my wonderful niece. I think that from the bottom of my heart as I harvest another batch of perfectly grown broccoli this year. But our peaceful life was about to be disrupted. One weekend, Holly announced, "I'm taking the day off today," and went to check on our vegetable garden. I decided to take it easy with her.
Monica, the cabbages are full of holes from bugs.
Hearing her call, I stepped outside. Oh wow, they've really been eaten up. And they were just about ready to harvest too. As Holly and I were checking on our garden, we suddenly heard a strangely high-pitched voice calling out from a distance, "Hello."
Holly, it's been so long.
Wait, Mom?
Unbelievably, Rachel, my sister and Holly's biological mother, was walking up the path to our house. For 15 years, she had never once tried to visit Holly, never shown the slightest interest, no matter how many times I updated her.
Holly, I've missed you. I'm here to take back my beloved daughter. Your aunt hasn't been overworking you, has she? You must have been so lonely. Let's go home together.
Rachel, her eyes wide with excitement, rushed toward Holly, practically out of breath. There was a desperate intensity in her voice that didn't seem normal. Feeling a sense of unease, I instinctively stepped between Rachel and Holly. "Is that really all you have to say after showing up out of nowhere? Have you forgotten what you did to Holly 15 years ago?"
A woman who isn't even her mother has no right to butt in. That was ages ago, and it doesn't matter anymore. Listen, I knew that sooner or later you'd get a man and start seeing Holly as a burden, so I came to get her before she gets hurt. Let's go, Holly. Come home with me.
"You've got some nerve." While I stood there, stunned by her audacity, Rachel grabbed Holly's arm and started yanking her toward her. "Hold on a second. Why are you suddenly trying to take Holly back?"
I just told you. I came to get her before you start treating her like an inconvenience.
"Then why didn't you come for her sooner?"
I wanted to, but I had a lot going on.
As Rachel and I argued, Holly suddenly yanked her arm free from her mother's grasp with surprising force.
Stop it. You just want to use me now that I'm famous. I know exactly what you're after.
Well,
Rachel flinched, clearly caught off guard by Holly's accusation. I nodded in agreement with Holly's words. Rachel had no interest in the daughter she abandoned until now.
am I using you? That's ridiculous.
Rachel forced out a nervous laugh, but Holly glared at her coldly. Then Rachel suddenly snapped, like she had nothing left to lose.
I'm Holly's mother, no matter what anyone says. What's wrong with showing that off?
Rachel quickly pulled out her phone and huddled up next to Holly.
Come on, let's take a mother-daughter reunion selfie. This will blow up on social media. The famous singer Holly, raised by her aunt after being taken from her mother, finally reunites with her real mom in a touching moment. And then, boom, I get famous too, and the money starts rolling in.
So that was it. Rachel wasn't here for Holly. She was here for her fame and wealth. Ever since we moved here, Holly had shown a natural talent for music. She was always singing whenever she had free time. At school, she amazed everyone by playing the organ and piano effortlessly. and one of the neighbors even gifted us a piano they no longer used. That's when Holly's talent truly blossomed. She started writing and composing her own songs, uploading videos online without showing her face. Her music took off instantly. She had remained anonymous for years, but after graduating college, she finally revealed her face. With her friendly smile and natural charm, her popularity skyrocketed. We always knew people with bad intentions would start showing up, but I never expected Rachel to be the first.
Holly, follow me back on social media. Let's become a famous mother-daughter duo and live a luxurious life together.
Rachel took multiple selfies with Holly, satisfied as she tapped away on her phone.
Everyone's gonna freak out when they see this. This is my big break as an online influencer. Oh, and your aunt's about to get dragged all over the internet too. An unmarried, childless woman who stole a daughter from her real mother.
Hey, how could you say that about Aunt Monica?
Holly, furious, tried to snatch Rachel's phone away, but Rachel just cackled.
It's already posted, so it's too late. Now, let's go, Holly. If you stay with her, your fans will turn against her once they know the truth. They'll demand that you be returned to your real mother. Maybe I should expose your aunt's face too?
Rachel was completely caught up in her own delusions, but in reality, posting that photo was going to backfire on her. Let's see who really gets dragged by the public. Holly, who had been trying to grab Rachel's phone, suddenly paused at my calm remark.
Oh, you're right.
What are you talking about? Trying to act tough? If Holly leaves, you'll have nothing left. You'll just rot away alone in this filthy countryside while I live the high life. I almost feel bad for you.
Rachel was still laughing uncontrollably. But Holly and I simply exchanged a glance and shrugged, completely unfazed. Rachel didn't like that.
Are you mocking me?
She snapped, stepping toward us.
Mom, actually, Aunt Monica and I are publishing a photo essay about my life story. She helped me with the writing.
Your life story.
Rachel froze, her expression going blank. The book comes out tomorrow, and she's written everything about how you refused to send her to school and treated her like a servant. Rachel's eyes widened in shock. But she still didn't seem to grasp just how terrible a mother she had been.
What? That's not true. I wasn't a bad mother. And now I just went and revealed myself on social media as your mother. What if people start harassing me? This is so unfair.
Her phone screen was already flooding with notifications. The post she had just made was gaining traction. Right now, the response might be positive, but tomorrow, when Holly's book is released. You brought this on yourself. You abandoned Holly and only came crawling back when it suited you. Now, you're flaunting yourself as her mother and posting pictures online without even thinking. I want to respect Holly's wishes, but I don't ever want someone like you calling herself her mother.
Same here. Aunt Monica is the one who raised me. You just gave birth to me. I will never go with you. And don't ever show your face here again.
Rachel barely seemed to be listening anymore, too distracted by her phone notifications. Rachel stomped her feet in frustration, glancing between her phone, which kept receiving notifications, and our angry faces.
This is such a pain. If I delete the pictures now, it'll just fuel the rumors even more. In that case, I have no choice. I'm taking Holly with me no matter what. Singers make a lot of money, right? I deserve to live it up with all that cash.
Completely panicked, Rachel grabbed Holly's arm again.
Stop it. Help me.
Holly screamed desperately, and her cries drew the attention of our neighbors, who began gathering around.
Who is it that abandoned me? You dumped me on Aunt Monica, got yourself a partner, and called me a burden because of my disability. And now you suddenly want me back just for money? Unbelievable.
Stop it, Holly.
Rachel, now visibly flustered by all the eyes on her, turned red and yelled at Holly. Seeing that, I decided to drive the final nail in. Oh wow, looks like you still have a habit of yelling at Holly when things don't go your way. There's no way I'd leave my precious niece with someone like you. Get lost already. And don't even think about coming near my house again. My raised voice made the gathered neighbors murmur among themselves. A mother who screams at her own child, Rachel could feel their judgmental stares and, on the verge of tears, spat out a typical villain's last words, "You'll regret this," before running away. Well, this is nothing compared to the backlash Rachel is going to face from the public soon.
Yeah, but that's not our problem. She brought it all on herself.
Holly and I laughed, thanking our neighbors before returning to tend to our beloved garden. Later on, we began to understand why Rachel had suddenly been so desperate to take Holly back. Apparently, she didn't get along with the man she married 15 years ago, and after years of fighting, they ended up getting divorced. Since Rachel hadn't worked at all during her marriage, she was now scrambling to find someone to support her. She wasn't just looking for Holly to take care of her. She had also been hoping to debut as a celebrity mother of a famous musician. But now, with her face plastered all over social media and Holly's photo essay out in the world, Rachel was nowhere near being a popular figure. Her former friends cut ties with her after learning what she had done to Holly and how she had tried to exploit her. Even walking through her neighborhood had become unbearable, with people whispering behind her back. On top of that, she had returned to working at a bar for the first time in 15 years, where she had earned herself the nickname the Wicked Witch, enduring the daily stress of having to laugh it off. If she had just kept quiet, she could have stayed anonymous as Holly's mother, but she brought this upon herself. And even though she's my sister, I don't feel the slightest bit of sorry for her. As for Holly and me, life continued just as peacefully as before Rachel's intrusion. Now that Holly had shared her past, she became an inspiration for people struggling with their own family issues or not fitting in at school, and her popularity only grew. Still, she preferred working from home, only traveling to New York when necessary, and rarely making media appearances. She even told me, "I just want to stay here and live a quiet life with Aunt Monica forever." Hearing that made me so happy. But as much as I loved having her here, I also wanted Holly to go wherever she wanted, to find whoever she wanted to share her life with, and to live freely. Of course, it would be lonely without her, but I needed to prepare myself for that day. Besides, I owe my peaceful life to Holly. Over the past 15 years, she has already given me more happiness than I could ever ask for. For now, though, she still wants to stay here, and there's no reason to rush her out. So, I'll continue to enjoy this simple, joyful life with my wonderful niece for as long as I can.
I immediately put up a sign at my restaurant saying it was temporarily closed and headed to the apartment where my son and his wife lived. The room was completely dark, making it hard to see. The air inside was chilly, and it seemed like the heater wasn't on. Calling out my 2 grandchildren's names, I stepped inside. "Emily, Kevin, Grandma's here." As I walked further in, I saw 2 small figures moving in the unlit living room. When I turned on the light, I found Emily, who was painfully thin, shivering in the freezing room. Beside her, Kevin was trembling as he ate a banana from Emily's hand. 4 frightened eyes stared at me. "Emily, Kevin." Unable to bear it, I hugged them both tightly. They clung to me, sobbing uncontrollably. Their little hands gripped my body with all their strength. How lonely they must have been. Their mother had collapsed and was taken to the hospital, but she never came back. They must have been so scared, their little hearts on the verge of breaking. Thinking about what they had gone through, my chest ached. Their father, Jake, wasn't there. When I called him to ask where he was, he just chuckled and replied,
"We're staying at a resort hotel on a family trip. We'll be back tomorrow."
"I see. Make sure you get back safely." With that, I hung up the phone. Later, when he returned home, he was faced with an unbelievable sight. "My name is Kathy. I run a small restaurant, and today's lunch rush is as hectic as ever. This place, Tom's Diner, was handed down to me from my in-laws. Welcome. I'll have your seat ready in just a moment. Since I manage everything by myself, keeping up with the pace is a challenge. Regular customers reassure me when they see me rushing around."
Take your time. No need to rush.
Those few words bring me a bit of comfort. Some customers have been coming here since my in-laws' days, while others drop by because they live or work nearby. I love this time of day, when the place is filled with the energy of people enjoying their meals. Hearing someone say, "This is delicious," makes me secretly do a little fist pump inside. I used to run this place with my husband. People can't function on an empty stomach. That's why we always cooked meals that would give our customers energy. That was his favorite saying. We would plan the menu together, count the cash in the register, and even rearrange the furniture. Finding new ways to improve the restaurant was fun. After our son, Jake, was born, we continued working like that until he was in high school. But when Jake was in his 2nd year of high school, my husband passed away in an accident. It was an incredibly difficult time. I even thought about closing the restaurant. Jake was preparing for college admission, so he couldn't help out. I couldn't imagine running the place alone. Then, one day, a regular customer saw me in town and said, "We're waiting for you." Their warm smile gave me the strength to try again, even if I had to do it alone. "It'll be okay. I'll figure something out." I talked to friends and my still living in-laws and decided to downsize the restaurant to a more manageable scale. 3 months after my husband passed, Tom's Diner reopened. Jake passed his college admission and got into his first choice school.
It's too far to commute from home, so I'd like to live on my own.
Of course, let's go check out some apartments. I tried my best to support Jake's wishes. When he was little, both my husband and I were always tied up with the restaurant, and we didn't get to spend much time with him. The restaurant was busy, and we couldn't afford to neglect it. Even after closing, my husband would stay behind to prep for the next day. I'd go home, cook dinner, and spend time with Jake while waiting for my husband to return.
Daddy, are you working again today?
I still remember how Jake used to ask that every night when he was little. The lonely look on his face is burned into my memory and won't fade. If I could have, I would have loved for the three of us to sit down for meals together more often. But that only happened once or twice. I always felt guilty for making Jake feel so lonely. I want you to learn whatever interests you, find something you're passionate about, and pursue it with everything you've got. I told him that the night before he moved out for college. Jake just nodded slightly, looking down. He didn't say anything else. After he moved out, I continued running the small restaurant on my own. We had enough savings to cover his tuition, so he didn't need to take out loans or apply for scholarships. His 4 years in college flew by in the blink of an eye. During that time, I kept the restaurant going by myself. After graduating, Jake got a job and stepped into the working world. I imagined him in a suit and tie, squeezed into a packed subway on his way to work. The thought of it made me chuckle to myself. My little Jake had grown up so much. And to my surprise, he already had a girlfriend he was serious about marrying. When he introduced her to me, I nearly jumped out of my skin. His girlfriend, Natalie, was stunning. She looked like she could be a magazine model.
Nice to meet you. I'm Natalie. I've been dating Jake.
Her elegant voice and polite way of speaking left me speechless. I even wondered if she came from a wealthy family.
Not at all. Just a normal family.
Even the way she chuckled softly was graceful. I couldn't help but wonder what on earth Jake did to win over someone so amazing. It turned out that rather than moving in together officially, Jake had just ended up living at her place.
I had no choice. My neighbor was way too noisy.
No choice, huh, Jake?
It's fine, really. I had already rented a slightly bigger place, so it worked out perfectly.
Natalie spoke up cheerfully, as if coming to his defense. Her refined speech, graceful mannerisms, and warm smile. I completely took a liking to her and found myself saying this. I hope you guys will stay together forever. Not long after they got married, and 3 years later, they had 2 children. Their first child was a girl, whom they named Emily. The second was a boy, Kevin. I guess I'm a grandma now. I murmured to my late husband's altar, feeling a deep sense of nostalgia. On anniversaries and special occasions, I always place slightly fancier sweets as an offering. I did the same on the days my grandchildren were born. Even after having kids, Natalie still made time to drop by my restaurant whenever she could.
Hi, Kathy.
Oh, hello, Natalie. how's work?
I switched to a remote job after the kids were born.
Oh my, I guess we live in that kind of era now. I looked at little Emily and Kevin in turns, marveling at them. These tiny kids would one day grow up and stand on their own, just like Jake did. Thinking about it, children felt like such a mysterious thing. I couldn't help but stare at them, mesmerized. As the seasons passed, my grandchildren kept growing. The wrinkles on my face multiplied, and before I knew it, Emily had started elementary school. How old are you now, Emily? One day, when she visited the restaurant, I asked her.
I'm 6, but I'll be 7 on my next birthday.
Her response was so well spoken, it was hard to believe she was only in elementary school. She must have taken after her mother. According to Natalie, Emily was also great at looking after her little brother.
They never fight and get along really well.
Natalie said proudly. Everything seemed perfect, like life was moving toward a bright and happy future. But not everything was so simple. There was one thing that worried me, Jake. Even after getting a job, he had trouble holding one down. The first company he joined after college, he quit in less than 6 months.
They expect too much. The pay isn't worth it.
Then he found another job. But again, he quit in under 3 months.
I can't do what I actually want, and they don't even offer remote work. Ridiculous.
You won't get anywhere if you keep switching jobs so often.
It's not my fault. The economy sucks.
Whenever things didn't go his way, he'd complain and quit. Watching him, I could only shake my head with a sigh. If you're not working, then you must be helping take care of Emily and Kevin, right?
No way. That's Natalie's jobs, not mine.
Natalie was the one financially supporting the household instead of Jake. Even while talking to me, Jake was glued to his smartphone screen. What could be so important that he was staring at it so intently?
Oh, Mom, take a look at this. I'm into food blogging, and I post on social media.
He held out his phone, showing me a feed full of pictures from different restaurants. Juicy burgers, spaghetti, breakfast platters, everything looked delicious. Jake was talking about his number of followers and likes, but it all sounded like gibberish to me. Instead of playing around with that, why don't you get a real job?
This isn't playing around. I'm serious about this. I'm trying to become an influencer.
What even is that?
Forget it. Just follow me and start liking my posts, Mom.
I have no idea how to do that.
Give me your phone. I'll install the app for you, and here's how you do it.
His fingers moved quickly, and in no time, he had created an account, set everything up. And he showed me which button to press for likes and how to view posts. But once he left, I was completely lost again. I don't understand any of this. I can't keep up. I set my smartphone aside and focused on balancing the books for my restaurant instead. Whenever I had video calls with Natalie, I realized she too was being pressured to check Jake's social media. There were far more important things right in front of him that needed his attention. For me, being able to see Emily and Kevin over video chat was much more meaningful than social media. After Jake lost his jobs, he briefly helped out at my restaurant. His reason? It seems easier than an office job. Of course, no job is easy, but I was still grateful for the help. These days, it's rare for kids to take over their parents' businesses. I never intended to force Jake to do so. When the time came, I planned to close up shop without hesitation. But I couldn't help but wonder, had something changed in him? Was he finally thinking about taking over the restaurant? A tiny flicker of hope lit up in my heart. Overjoyed, I had Jake work at the restaurant, greeting customers and taking orders. He quickly got along with regulars and chatted with them like he belonged there. For the first week, things seemed to be going well. Maybe this suits him better than an office job. I allowed myself to think that, but by the next week, he started slacking off. He barely took orders, rarely cleaned tables, and hardly greeted customers. Worse, he started scrolling through his social media in front of customers. Then he began asking everyone, regulars and newcomers alike, to follow him and like his posts. The following day, he didn't show up for work at all. "Jake, where are you? Are you taking the day off?"
I'm done with that job. It's harder than I expected.
After that, no matter how many times I called, he never picked up. I was back to running the restaurant alone. In the end, Jake lasted less than 10 days before quitting. From that point on, he was more focused on social media than anything else. Meanwhile, Natalie had started juggling multiple jobs, cutting back on sleep just to make ends meet. I worried that she might collapse one day. But Jake didn't seem concerned at all. He kept up his food blogging and social media posts without a second thought. During one of our video calls, Natalie let her real feelings slip out.
I just wish he could bring in even a little income.
For the first time, she looked genuinely dejected, her shoulders slumped. Her radiant smile was gone, and even her beautiful voice sounded faint. Jake, as usual, was nowhere to be found, out hopping from restaurant to restaurant instead of being home. When I confronted him about it, he always gave the same excuse.
If I become famous and build connections, it'll pay off in the future.
I listened, though I didn't put much stock in his words. But deep down, I still had a tiny hope that if he could somehow make a living from it, I wanted to support him. Maybe I was too soft on him. Even Natalie, still believing in him, couldn't bring herself to criticize him too harshly. And in reality, thanks to his persistence, his follower count and likes were slowly increasing. But we would soon realize what a mistake it was to leave things as they were. One day, like any other, I was at my restaurant. Outside, it was freezing cold, almost like the middle of winter. The sky was overcast, and the forecast said it might snow later that night. Afternoons were usually slow, so I used the time to prep for the evening rush and clean the restaurant. As I was wiping down tables, my phone rang in my pocket. It was Natalie. I assumed it was another casual video call and answered. But her voice on the other end was weak, barely above a whisper.
Kathy, I'm sorry, but I need to tell you something.
She had collapsed from exhaustion a few days ago and was now hospitalized. Hospitalized? Right now? Are you okay?
I'm managing somehow.
You should have told me sooner.
I'm sorry. I wanted to, but Jake said not to.
Jake did?
He said he'd take care of the kids. But I can't stop worrying about them.
Of course. Is Jake at home? I couldn't imagine him actually doing that. But if his wife was in the hospital, surely even he would take care of his own children.
He told me he was watching them. I want to believe him, but
Hearing the hesitation in her voice, I felt a sinking feeling in my gut.
he's been posting pictures on social media. I don't think he's actually with them.
Natalie had been following Jake's social media. On a hunch, she checked the app. Even on the day she was hospitalized and the day after, he was casually posting pictures of pasta. I was speechless as I listened to Natalie.
And that restaurant? It's out of state.
I couldn't waste another second. There was no way two kids, not even 10 years old, could take care of themselves alone. I'm going over there right now.
Wait, I'll come too.
No, you need to stay in bed and rest. I cut her off a little firmly and hung up. If I didn't, she really would have tried to come with me. The doctor had ordered her to rest, and that was final. I immediately put up a sign at my restaurant saying it was temporarily closed and headed to my son's apartment. It was just 2 train stops away. I was grateful I had a spare key for emergencies like this. I quickly unlocked the door and stepped inside. Emily, Kevin, where are you? The room was pitch dark. I could barely see. As I took a step forward, something like a plastic bottle hit my foot. There was no sound. The silence in the apartment was deafening. I took another step. The air inside was freezing, and the heater clearly hadn't been turned on. Emily, Kevin, Grandma's here. As I moved further inside, I saw 2 small figures shift in the unlit living room. When I turned on the light, Emily was there, so thin it broke my heart. Beside her, Kevin was trembling, eating a banana from Emily's hand. 4 terrified eyes stared at me. Emily, Kevin. I couldn't hold back and wrapped them both in my arms.
Grandma,
They clung to me tightly and burst into tears. Their little hands gripped my body as if they'd never let go. How scared they must have been. Their mother collapsed, taken to the hospital, and never came back. Their tiny hearts must have felt like they were about to shatter. Just thinking about it made my heart ache. I'm so sorry I didn't realize sooner. It's okay now. I turned on the heater and pulled out some jackets for them to wear until the room warmed up. Then I boiled some water in the kitchen and made hot chocolate. They both sipped from their mugs eagerly, finishing every drop. But there was still no sign of Jake. I didn't even see his shoes by the door. Hoping it was all just some misunderstanding, I called him. He picked up almost immediately.
Oh, hey, Mom. What's up?
He was chuckling like nothing was wrong. What are you doing?
I'm trying this limited time menu item. It's totally Instagram worthy.
Where are you?
Family trip at a resort hotel. I'll be back tomorrow.
I could hear the noisy chatter and background sounds of a busy place. He is definitely in some tourist area. But he isn't with family, he's alone. Even now, all he cares about is himself. He isn't capable of protecting Natalie, Emily, or Kevin. If he couldn't, then I would. I swallowed my rage and kept my voice calm. I see. Make sure you get back safely.
Huh. Oh, right. I should bring you a souvenir.
Before he could finish, I hung up. He had kept Natalie's hospitalization a secret. And just to try a limited-time dish, he abandoned his children. When I asked Emily about it, she told me that Jake had lied, saying he was going to work.
I knew it. Mom collapsed because she was working too much, right?
Even at her young age, she understood why her mother had fallen ill. She might not have known the word overwork, but she knew what it meant. If even a child could understand that, why couldn't Jake?
Mom looked sick for a long time. That's why I fed Kevin whatever we had in the fridge.
What about you, Emily? Did you eat anything?
No. I held back.
She shook her head. Her little face was hollow, her frame painfully thin for an elementary schooler. She had likely eaten nothing for days.
I haven't been to school. I want to see my friends. But I thought I had to wait for Dad to come home.
Her eyes welled up with tears again. You're such a strong girl, Emily. That night, I decided to stay at the apartment. I wanted to cook something for them, but the fridge was empty. I couldn't even make an omelet with just ketchup. Well, looks like we'll have to eat out. What do you two want? The moment I asked, they excitedly rattled off one dish after another. In the end, we went to a family restaurant and had hamburgers, omelets, and parfaits. Seeing their bright smiles, I finally felt relieved. People can't function when they're hungry. I remembered my husband's words. When we got back home, both kids quickly fell into a deep sleep, their bellies full. As I watched their peaceful sleeping faces, my thoughts drifted to Jake. Even the next day, he didn't come home. I asked Emily about him while checking his social media. Social media is a convenient way to share information, but thanks to it, his actions were completely exposed. He had posted that today he was eating stew at yet another restaurant. Jake, just wait and see. I took the kids with me and headed to the hospital where Natalie was. As it turned out, she had just been cleared for discharge and was settling the bill. At the entrance, Natalie, Emily, and Kevin shared a heartfelt reunion.
But why are you here?
I can't forgive what my son has done. Come stay with me.
But I don't want to be a burden to you.
You're not the burden, my son is. I'm the one who should apologize for how awful he's been. Then I leaned in and whispered a plan to her. Natalie looked surprised at first, but then nodded firmly, determination in her eyes. A week later, exactly when Jake had promised to come home, he finally returned. But his house was already empty.
What? What the hell is this?
Instead of being shocked, he posted about it on social media, treating it like some joke. And just a few minutes later, he showed up at my restaurant.
Mom, you won't believe this. Natalie and the kids.
The moment he walked in, he started rambling in disbelief.
When I got home, the house was empty. There was nothing there.
Oh, and? It was lunchtime, and the restaurant was full of regulars. Clearly hoping for sympathy, he began telling his story to the entire restaurant.
I've been working so hard on social media for my family. But my wife and kids just up and left.
Oh my, how terrible. I responded flatly, but the regulars had a very different reaction. The sound of chairs scraping against the floor echoed throughout the room. And then, slowly and silently, they closed in on Jake.
Right. This is awful, isn't it?
Seemingly oblivious to the tension in the room, he continued trying to rile them up. Then, one of the regulars finally spoke.
You're that JJ guy from social media, aren't you?
Yeah. Are you my fan? Thanks for following.
Like hell I am. You practically forced me to follow you.
What?
The other customers nodded in agreement.
You keep spamming notifications, and when I finally checked, you were treating food like garbage.
Wait, did I do that?
You played around with free toppings, took one bite, and trashed the rest, calling it disgusting.
That was just a joke.
And you barely even took care of your wife and kids while goofing off.
Look, once I make it as an influencer, I'll.
Influencer? My ass.
The regular's face turned red with anger as he roared at Jake. One by one, the other customers joined in, their voices filled with rage. Soon, the entire restaurant erupted in shouts condemning him. Actually, before Jake arrived, I had already told the regulars what had happened. Natalie had canceled the apartment lease right after being discharged from the hospital. Now she and the kids, Emily and Kevin, were living with me. Jake hadn't been providing for his family. He had been off on his own, hopping from restaurant to restaurant. Instead of focusing on his responsibilities, all he cared about was growing his follower count and getting likes on social media. When I revealed everything, the regulars, who had been watching Jake's posts, were furious. One of them declared, "I'll give him a piece of my mind," and gathered the others. That's why they were all here today. Meanwhile, Jake, completely unaware of what was coming, was busy posting on social media as usual.
Stop it. I didn't do anything wrong. Help me.
Tearing up, Jake was shoved out of the restaurant by the regulars.
Don't ever show your face here again.
He was scolded so harshly that he ran away screaming. After that, I never saw him again. Weeks passed. The weather reports were now talking about spring approaching and warning about oak pollen. Lately, I'd been feeling a bit of an itch in my nose. Maybe it was allergies. Natalie, who had pollen allergies, complained that she couldn't stop sneezing. Even some of the regulars seemed to be suffering from the symptoms. I briefly wondered how Jake was handling it, but as far as I knew, he never had allergies. Where he was now, I had no idea. He had been so desperate to become famous that he had even pushed his friends to follow him. But in the end, that backfired. Ever since that day, his social media had been flooded with backlash from followers who had learned the truth. His identity had been exposed, and it was unlikely he'd ever return to this town. It was karma for how he had wasted food. Now I continued running the restaurant while living with Natalie and the kids. At Tom's Diner, we recently launched a website and made it possible for customers to book tables online. Natalie, who worked in web design, handled everything with ease. The website featured pictures of our dishes and stories about the restaurant's history, passed down from my in-laws. And of course, it also included a tribute to my husband.
I never got to meet my father-in-law, but through these stories, it feels like I have.
This is a beautiful website, Natalie. Thank you. But her contributions didn't stop there. She also set up a system to manage our inventory and sales, making bookkeeping much easier. What I used to do by hand was now instantly calculated by the computer with just a few inputs. This is amazing. Even I, who had struggled with smartphones, got used to it quickly. Now that we could also take reservations over the phone, business was better than ever. Emily started coming to the restaurant after school. She even helped answer the phone.
Hello, Tom's Diner. Yes, you'd like to make a reservation?
She still sounded a bit nervous, but when I offered to take over, she shook her head and insisted on handling it.
Our recommendation is the fried chicken. It's crispy and freshly made with a blend of secret spices for extra flavor.
Reading from her little notepad, she charmed every customer who overheard. The regulars were completely smitten with her. I wondered if, one day, she might take over this place. And with that thought, I continued running the restaurant as always. She's such a useless wife who doesn't do any housework and only thinking about herself. I'm having trouble with her.
You're our daughter-in-law, so don't slack off on the housework.
My in-laws have always been the kind of people who treat others like servants. But even so, making me work right after giving birth? Can I really call these people my family? Just then, my sister showed up at my in-laws' place. Let me tell you, my sister is tough. She surely brought some gifts, too. I'm Rebecca, 34 years old. I work at the front desk of a small travel agency.
Rebecca, it looks like we're not getting any more customers today, and it's almost closing time. You can go ahead and head out. Go pick up your little girl.
Oh, really? Thank you so much. I'll gladly take you up on that offer. My company has a warm, family-like atmosphere and is very understanding when it comes to parenting. That's exactly why I decided to work here. I started this job a year ago, after being a stay-at-home mom for a while. Before that, right after graduating from college, I worked at a major travel agency. When I was 28, I met Ryan, who was the same age as me through my friend. Ryan was an auto mechanic. He was a great talker and kind, and we got married when we were 30. Ryan, my husband, wanted us to live with his parents. Right now, my in-laws are still healthy, but at some point, they might need care. Rather than moving in with them when that time comes, maybe it's better to live together from the start. After giving it a lot of thought, I decided to accept living with my in-laws. I don't think it was a bad decision made just because I was caught up in the excitement of getting married. But in the end, these people turned out to be a total disaster. Right after we got married, I was still working. I figured we might have kids in the future, so I wanted to save as much money as possible while I still could. But Ryan had a different idea. Since we're living with my parents, we don't have to pay rent. And with both of us working, life's pretty comfortable. Let's take the whole family on a trip to Hawaii, he suddenly suggested. And of course, his parents, Steve and Megan, got all excited about Ryan's idea.
I've never been to Hawaii before, and you guys are covering all the costs, right?
Wait a minute.
Hawaii? Of course, we're staying at a luxury hotel, right? You can't trust cheap places overseas.
Even Steve was saying whatever he wanted. So Rebecca, you take care of the reservations. Ryan dumped the entire booking process on me. By the way, when I brought up the payment issue, I said, taking 4 adults to Hawaii is going to be really expensive. Ryan, do you think your parents could cover their share?
You also have some savings from before your marriage, don't you? You're already part of this family, which means your money is ours. Use your savings to pay for the trip.
What the heck? Sure, I married into the family, but making the wife cough up a huge amount of money right off the bat. I didn't feel great about it, but looking at the big picture, I figured I'd eventually become a real part of the family. And by that point, my in-laws were already set on going. I had to drain a good chunk of my savings from when I was single, which was a huge blow. But I thought, at least this will help me bond with my in-laws. Turns out, I couldn't have been more wrong. There was no shortage of drama during the trip.
Hey, Rebecca. The view from this hotel room is awful. I wanted a higher floor. How could you not check the room location properly? You're completely useless.
Rebecca, tell the staff here to lower the price. This is a total rip-off. There are plenty of similar things around. Go and negotiate.
Steve kept grumbling about the hotel accommodations, while Megan tried to haggle at luxury brand stores. I mean, a higher floor costs more money, and you don't just bargain at a high-end boutique. But one thing became crystal clear right away. These in-laws think they are in the center of the world for no reason. In the end, Steve stayed grumpy the entire time, and Megan kept complaining. I couldn't buy anything. I kept getting criticized, lost my savings, and it was just one disaster after another. I figured they just didn't understand the basics of traveling abroad. At the time, I tried to convince myself of that. But after we got back home, something changed. The situation got even worse. My in-laws suddenly started treating me horribly.
Rebecca, dinner tonight is awful. How did you even manage to make something this bad? It tastes like animal feed.
I'm sorry.
And make sure you clean up the front entrance properly. It's embarrassing if guests come over and see a mess. You're so thoughtless.
Oh, okay. Even though Ryan and I both worked full-time, somehow, I was the one stuck doing all the housework, including everything for my in-laws. Steve worked as a government employee, but Megan was a stay-at-home wife. Then, while we were at work, Megan would invite her neighbors over for endless chit-chat or watch concert DVDs of her favorite K-pop singers, singing along at the top of her lungs. One day, a neighbor stopped me and gave me a warning.
Hey you, can you stop singing in that weird voice all day? It's really annoying. I already told Megan, but she won't stop and I don't know what to do.
Wait. Why am I the one getting blamed? It wasn't even me. Apparently, Megan was embarrassed about getting complaints from the neighbors, so she decided to tell everyone that I was the one singing. I went to Ryan and asked him, "Hey, can you tell Megan to stop blaming me for her weird singing?" Then Ryan said,
Mom probably just wants to sing sometimes. Let her have her fun.
"No, that's not the issue. I don't care if she sings. But Megan is totally tone deaf, right? So when our neighbors complain, she tells them I'm the one singing, and now everyone's looking at me weird."
Who cares? Let people say whatever they want. Stop bugging me with stupid stuff while I'm playing my game.
He was completely glued to his phone, playing a mobile game, and wouldn't even have a proper conversation. And then, maybe Megan had overheard our discussion, because a few days later. Oh no! The moment I got home from work, I screamed as Megan splashed water all over me at the front door.
What the heck?
I was just cleaning the entrance. It's so dirty, thanks to a certain tone-deaf someone who never cleans properly. Always singing those weird songs. You're a nuisance to the neighbors, too.
Soaking wet. I looked up to see Megan smirking as she shouted loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Just because she got called tone deaf, she really had to take it this far? This was straight up childish bullying. Then Steve jumped in too. Rebecca, you forgot to iron my shirt. I'm leaving in 30 minutes, so hurry up and do it. He tossed his shirt at me like I was some kind of servant. Are you kidding me? I have to get ready for work in the morning too. I'm already swamped with making breakfast and hanging the laundry, and now I have to iron too. Megan, I'm really short on time. Would you mind taking care of it?
You should have prepared better. Do what you're supposed to do yourself.
She said this with a completely straight face while calmly eating her breakfast I had made. Do what you're supposed to do yourself. Shouldn't Steve or Megan be the ones handling Steve's clothes? And as for Ryan, he was still living his life exactly the same as before we got married, enjoying himself without a care in the world. Even if I got home early from work, Ryan never lifted a finger to help with the housework. On weekends, if I asked him, "Hey, can you come grocery shopping with me?" he would just say, "No way. It's my day off and I want to relax." And then spend the whole day glued to his video games. I'm off today too, you know?
Rebecca, isn't lunch ready yet? Hurry up. You're so inefficient. What a useless wife.
Hey, where's my coffee?
Even on weekends, I was nothing more than a servant to my in-laws. When was I ever supposed to get a break? A year into our marriage, I got pregnant. In the early months, I struggled with terrible morning sickness. Just smelling fried food made me feel sick. So I asked Megan, Megan, my morning sickness is really bad. Could you take over cooking for a little while? But her response?
Morning sickness. You'll get used to it. Here, breathe it in properly.
Then she shoved a freshly fried piece of chicken right up to my nose. It felt like some kind of food torture. Stop it. I really can't take it. I covered my mouth and Megan smirked.
Oh my, you're really so weak that you're trying to push cooking onto someone else over something like this? I was totally fine when I was pregnant. Honestly, if you're this fragile, is the baby even going to be okay? Or are you just being lazy?
She just kept throwing insult after insult. Does she not even realize that early pregnancy symptoms vary from person to person? She might have been fine, but plenty of women suffer terribly from morning sickness. I was really hurt, so I decided to talk to Ryan. Hey Ryan, I think I'm having a rougher time than usual in early pregnancy. My morning sickness is really bad, and I need Megan to help out, but she just won't listen. Could you ask her to be more understanding?
Oh yeah, Mom already told me. She said you're just trying to get out of doing housework.
Wait, hold on. I'm not trying to slack off. I really feel awful.
But it's not like you're sick, right? Every mom in the world goes through this, so it can't be that bad. Just do what you always do and handle it.
What the heck? Since no one was willing to help me, I had no choice but to find ways to cut down on my chores and get things done faster. But then,
oh my, Rebecca, you're making such simple meals again. Just grilling something or tossing ingredients together. Looks like you're getting a little lazy. Do it over.
Megan tossed the meal I had worked so hard to prepare straight into the trash.
Make something more filling next time.
And just like that, I was treated like a servant even during my pregnancy. But none of this had anything to do with my baby. I wanted to discuss and carefully choose the things we needed for our child with Ryan. But when I opened a parenting magazine and showed it to him, all he said was, "I dunno, just handle it yourself." That was it. As if I wasn't just as clueless as he was. This man had absolutely no sense of responsibility as a future parent. It became painfully clear that I couldn't rely on him for anything. As I entered my 3rd trimester, I decided to quit my job. At first, both Ryan and his parents were completely against it.
If Rebecca quits, our household income will go down. You better go back to work as soon as you give birth.
I'm retiring soon. You need to keep working.
Oh, so you're planning to be a stay-at-home mom and take it easy. Must be nice. Women have it so easy.
They all had something to say. It wasn't like I had planned to quit either. I had wanted to take maternity leave, go on parental leave, and return to the job I loved. But living in this house, I realized there was no one else who would take care of my child but me. Since they kept pushing back so hard, I finally snapped and fired back. Okay, then after my baby is born, who's going to take care of them? It's not like I can immediately get them into daycare. And if they get sick, they won't be able to go at all. If I have no choice, I'll take time off. But when I can't, will any of you step up and help?
What are you talking about? Raising a child is the parent's responsibility. You can't just dump it on others.
No, I wasn't trying to dump anything on them. I was just asking for a little support. This was their own child, their grandchild, and yet not a single one of them was willing to step up. That realization hurt. To them, I was just an outsider who happened to marry into their family. I'm not saying I'll never work again. Once the baby is older, I'll look into going back to work or taking on a part-time job. But while they're still small, I want to be the one taking care of them properly. After hearing that, the 3 of them reluctantly agreed. And so, I quit my job before giving birth. But even up until the very last moment of my pregnancy, they still made me do all the housework as usual. Finally, the day of my scheduled delivery arrived. I had opted for an induced birth and was already admitted to the hospital. Megan started ranting nonsense about it, saying, "That's unnatural. You should wait for labor to start naturally. I just can't keep up with how young people think these days." I felt it was dangerous for me to stay in this house without any support. By this point, I had stopped caring about them, and I was only thinking about my baby. A mother has to be strong. I safely gave birth and contacted my in-laws, but all Ryan said was, "Oh, okay. So, when are you coming home?" Not a single one of them came to see me or the baby. Meanwhile, my parents and sister rushed over right away to celebrate.
She's adorable. And you did such a great job.
Hearing my mom say that, I suddenly felt relieved, and tears started streaming down my face. That's right. I had done it all on my own. If I could give birth by myself, then surely I could handle whatever came next at my in-laws' house. Or so I thought. On the 6th day after giving birth, I returned to my house with my newborn daughter. Waiting for me was Megan. "Finally, you're back. Now, clean the house," she ordered. Wait a second. I literally just gave birth a few days ago. My body wasn't even close to recovering yet. And she wanted to dump housework on me already? What kind of person does that? But dust isn't good for a newborn. So, despite being completely exhausted, I forced myself to clean. Then, just like before, I cooked dinner and did all the cleanup. While I was busy, my baby started crying, but neither of my in-laws even made a move to help. Even though I had brought the baby home, neither of them even bothered to take a proper look at their grandchild. On top of that, Ryan didn't come home that day. I had told him the discharge date over the phone. The next day, when he finally came back, I asked him, "Ryan, where were you yesterday? I just brought our baby home."
I just went out for drinks. I am busy working, so don't nag me about it.
Ryan said bluntly. Did he not feel even the slightest urge to see his newborn baby? As I had expected, nothing changed in the way I was treated after giving birth. Even though I was sleep deprived from the baby waking up at night, I was still forced to do housework and keep up with daily life as usual. I had at least hoped Ryan would help out a little with the baby, but all I got was, "I don't know how, so no," as if he had zero interest from the start. He didn't even try to hold the baby. My in-laws weren't any better. "She doesn't look like Ryan at all." "Not cute one bit," Megan said, barely glancing at the baby. "They didn't even try to hold her, let alone show any affection." And then they actually had the nerve to say, "Is she really our grandchild?" Seriously? Did they really think a wife they had worked to the bone had the time or energy to go out messing around? The moment the baby cried even a little, they'd snap, "Shut that baby up," or "The neighbors are coming over soon, so take the baby and go out somewhere." Rather than being treated like family, I was treated like an outsider. Do these people not understand that babies cry? Weren't they parents themselves at one point? Left with no choice, I put my baby in the stroller and went out, even though I had no errands to run. I felt completely drained and empty, but I knew my baby had no one else to rely on but me. I had to stay strong. Just as I was thinking that, I spotted a bakery in front of me. When I'm feeling down, sweets are the best way to lift my mood. I might as well celebrate my baby's birth too. I bought 4 puddings for the family. Pudding is my favorite dessert. Back when we were dating, Ryan used to buy them for me or take me to nice places to eat them. But in the past few years, he hasn't brought me anything at all. As the temperature dropped, I headed home, only to find that the neighbors were still there, chatting happily with Megan. I didn't want to interrupt, so I quietly stepped inside. "Rebecca is becoming a stay-at-home mom, right? Does that mean we'll have to listen to that awful singing all the time now?" One of the neighbors joked.
I'm so sorry for being stuck with such a nuisance of a daughter-in-law. She's so full of herself. She even decided to become a stay-at-home mom all on her own. Steve is retiring soon, so we could really use an extra income. But no, she just does whatever she wants. Seriously, she's such a useless wife who only thinks about herself. It's ridiculous. She can't even handle housework properly, and she thinks she deserves to stay home? 100 million years too early for that, don't you think?
If anyone here is only thinking about themselves, it's you. And once again, they blamed that awful singing on me. That night, while preparing dinner, I suddenly came down with a high fever. It was probably from overworking myself right after giving birth. And yet, no one helped with the baby, and Ryan didn't even come home. Late at night, when my fever finally started to go down, I got up and headed to the kitchen, thinking I should eat something. That's right. I bought pudding earlier. But when I got there, Ryan, who had just come home, was already eating the pudding I had bought.
On the table, there was already one empty jar. And now he was reaching for a second one. Wait, why are you eating 2 of them?
I was hungry. Then Mom and Dad said there was pudding, so I ate it.
One of those was mine.
It's just pudding. What's the big deal? Don't be so stingy. Besides, you're just pretending to be sick again so you can slack off, aren't you? Seriously, cut it out. Mom told me again. Rebecca is getting lazy. Just do your part properly.
Ryan muttered as he shoved the last pudding into his mouth, then tossed the empty jar at me. Do your part properly? Who the hell is telling me that? That's exactly what I want to say to all of them. Ryan wasn't the person he used to be. He had probably even forgotten that pudding was my favorite. They call me a failure as a family member? Fine by me. If that's how they see me, then I'll be the one to cut them off first. Pudding may be sweet, but the bitterness of being denied is not. The next day, I returned to my parents' house with my baby. The moment I arrived at the front door, my parents came out to greet me.
Welcome home, sweetheart. You did well coming back. Come inside.
As they spoke, they gently took my baby from my arms and carried my bags inside. This is what real family looks like.
Oh, Rebecca, what's wrong? Are you feeling sick?
Hearing my mom's voice, I suddenly realized I was crying. As my dad took care of the baby, I sat down with my mom and told her everything that had happened.
Oh dear, that must have been really tough on you.
I wanted to stay strong for my baby, but I realized that living in that house where I'm not even seen as family isn't good for the baby either. That's why I've decided I need to move on.
I see. Well, you don't have to worry about a thing. Your dad and I are more than happy to have you and your baby here. It's just the 2 of us old folks, after all. With you 2 here, our house will feel much livelier.
Mom's words were so full of warmth and encouragement. Then she handed me something. Here, eat this and get your strength back. Really?
You love pudding, don't you? I heard you were coming today, so I made sure to have some ready.
Looking down at the pudding in front of me, I felt my tears well up again. It meant so much that my mom cared enough to think about me. I wanted to be this kind of parent, too. I was certain that I could not stay in that house. Just as I was thinking that, I heard 2 voices from the front door. We're coming in. Walking into the room were my sister, Kate, and her 3-year-old daughter, Maddie. As soon as Maddie spotted me holding the baby, her eyes lit up with excitement. There's a baby! Can I see? Can I touch? Watching Maddie play with the baby filled me with happiness. As I was lost in thought, Kate suddenly spoke up.
Are you thinking about moving back home?
What makes you think that?
I can just tell by looking at your face. And besides, I've been there myself.
Kate said confidently. That's right. She had been through her divorce and was now raising Maddie on her own. She continued speaking.
Also, I saw something.
What?
Is Ryan at work today?
Yeah. It's his shift and he left in his work uniform. I even made him a lunch this morning.
Well, I don't think I was mistaken, but if I am, I'm sorry. On my way here, I saw him walking with a woman.
I didn't say a word. Then, I finally gathered my courage and spoke up. Hey, Kate, I need a favor. 1 month later, Kate came to visit my home, bringing Maddie along with her.
We're here.
Oh, Kate and Maddie, welcome. As I welcomed them,
Megan appeared.
Oh, Kate, were you planning to visit today? Rebecca didn't tell us anything about it.
Seeing Megan glance at me while asking, Kate responded.
It's been a while. Sorry for dropping by unexpectedly. I was visiting my friend nearby and thought I'd stop by after calling Rebecca. I also wanted to see the baby. I hope you don't mind. Come on, Maddie. Let's go see the baby. Oh, and here, I brought some pudding as a little gift.
Kate handed a cake box with pudding inside to Megan, almost shoving it into her hands, and quickly stepped inside. She found the baby, leaned in gently, and gazed at her little face. Then, while looking around the room, she commented,
This place is spotless. I wouldn't have guessed there's a newborn here. When Maddie was little, I barely got any sleep, and the house was always a mess. But for it to be this clean, Megan, you must be very meticulous.
Megan hesitated for a moment before forcing a laugh. Oh, well. Yeah, right. Nothing but lies. She should know by now that my sister would see through her act instantly, but she still tries to keep up appearances. Kate smirked and continued.
Rebecca, you married into a great family. It's the complete opposite of my ex-husband's house. His mom dumped all the housework on me and didn't help with my baby at all. That place was like a house of horrors.
Then, Kate turned to Megan with a bright smile.
But you're different, right, Megan? You help with the housework and take care of the baby properly, don't you? I'm so jealous.
Oh, well, it's nothing special.
Megan muttered, avoiding my gaze entirely, as if feeling a little guilty. So, I answered for her. Well, of course. You gave birth to Ryan, so you must understand what a woman's body goes through right after childbirth, right? A woman's body after giving birth is like she's been in a car accident. Forcing her to do housework right after is just awful, don't you think? Megan shot me a glare filled with resentment. Just then, Ryan rushed through the door.
Is Rebecca here? Wait. Kate, it's been a while.
Hey, Ryan. Thanks for having me over.
But before he could even finish greeting Kate, he hurried over to me and spoke in a hushed voice.
Rebecca, I need to talk to you.
But I had no intention of hiding anything. Oh, talk? Go ahead, right here.
Not here. It's something important. Can we talk somewhere else?
No, I'm not leaving Kate and my baby alone. If you have something to say it here. When I replied, he gave up, saying, well, later then. As we had this little exchange, Maddie suddenly spoke up. I want pudding. You're right. Since Kate brought it as a gift, let's have some. I took the box of pudding from Megan, who was still holding it, and placed the contents on the table nearby. Here you go, Maddie.
Yay!
Pudding is so good. I've been on a diet lately, but today is my cheat day. I purposely said cheat day extra loudly, and Ryan immediately looked away. As Maddie happily started eating her pudding, I turned to Kate and asked, by the way, did your ex-husband help out with parenting at all?
Oh, you wouldn't believe it. He did absolutely nothing for his own child. He never held her, never changed a diaper, never gave her a bath. Whenever she cried, all he'd say was, hey, she's crying. Like, what the hell? Whose kid did he think she was? And while I was running around exhausted from taking care of Maddie, he was cheating on me. He was seriously the worst man ever.
Kate passionately told her story right in front of Ryan.
Ryan, you're not like that, right?
She leaned in toward him with a sharp look, and I followed suit. Yeah, right.
A father who doesn't help with raising his own child is just an irresponsible loser, don't you think? A terrible excuse for a human being, right? Ryan, seemingly overwhelmed by our pressure, stammered, "Well, I guess so." At that moment, as if I had just remembered something, I asked Kate,
Oh, by the way, did you bring it?
"Oh yeah, I've got it right here." She pulled a brown envelope out of her bag and handed it to me. I checked the contents and then called out to Steve. "Steve, could you come here? There's something I need you to hear."
Useless daughter-in-law, what do you want from me?
He came mumbling, "Sorry, everyone. My sister saying she just happened to be in the area and stopped by was a lie. The truth is, I asked her to come because there's something I need you all to see."
What the hell are you up to?
Ignoring Steve's irritated tone, I pulled out a few photos from the brown envelope and spread them out in front of my in-laws. Seeing the pictures, they gasped, "What are these?" The photos showed Ryan sitting in a park, eating lunch, reading a newspaper, and walking into an internet cafe. In every photo, he was in his work uniform, and it was clearly the middle of a weekday. "Steve and Megan, it looks like we've all been deceived by Ryan."
What do you mean?
My in-laws looked completely clueless. So I turned to Ryan and said, "Your company went bankrupt, didn't it?"
What?
My in-laws' faces filled with shock, while Ryan looked incredibly uncomfortable. I continued. "Lately, he's been leaving for work at the usual time, but his uniform never gets dirty. That felt off to me. So I checked our bank account, and there was no paycheck coming in from his job anymore. But strangely enough, money was disappearing from the savings account for our child. So I hired a private investigator. And his company shut down months ago. Why the hell didn't you tell me?"
Well, you had childbirth and taking care of our baby, so I didn't want to stress you out.
Wow. So you were looking out for me. Funny, it never once felt that way.
You just don't see it. I always put you first,
He really should stop talking before he makes things worse. Well, let's test how much he really thinks about me. All right then, pop quiz.
What?
What's my favorite food?
Well, I got it. Meat. You've been making a lot of meat dishes lately.
No, that's just your parents' preference. I actually like fish more than meat.
Then, what was it again?
As he fumbled for an answer, Maddie, who had been casually watching, suddenly spoke up.
Uncle Ryan, you don't know? I know. It's pudding, right? That's why Mommy and I bought some today.
Then, with a big smile, she delivered a sharp remark. "Uncle Ryan, you don't know anything about Rebecca." Nice one, Maddie. That's right. Ryan doesn't remember anything about me. Because the only thing on his mind is, Maddie is absolutely right. You don't care about me at all.
What are you talking about? I just forgot for a second. Oh yeah, that's right. Pudding. It was pudding.
Ryan was trying to brush it off as simple forgetfulness, but I wasn't letting him off the hook that easily. "Oh, just an accident, right? Then let's see if you can explain this." I pulled out another set of photos from the envelope and spread them out in front of my in-laws. The pictures showed Ryan walking arm in arm with a woman, entering a motel together.
Why? How did you get these?
Well, you see, Kate spotted you. But that didn't make sense, because you were supposed to be at work at that time. So I hired a private investigator to look into your activities. Ryan was cheating on me,
No wonder he was always coming home late. He wasn't working, and he was taking leisurely breaks at a motel. His face turned completely pale. How strange. Earlier, you said you were looking out for me. What a joke, you liar. Ever since your company went under, you've been using the money I saved for our child to play around with some other woman. You're a disgrace as a father. Hearing this, Ryan scrambled to make excuses.
No, I was gonna get a new job soon and put the money back. I just borrowed a little until then.
So you're telling me you stole our child's savings to spoil some other woman? What kind of upbringing leads to that kind of thinking? Megan and Steve, can you explain? I turned to my in-laws, who had been listening to everything.
What?
They were so shocked by the truth that they couldn't even form a proper response. So, I asked again, what kind of upbringing did you give Ryan? Before calling me a useless wife, maybe you should focus on fixing your own son's behavior first. At that moment, Ryan's eyes widened and he snapped at me. So it was you who sent the compensation claim to her house. That must have been the important talk he wanted to have when he came home earlier. That's right. Once the investigator confirmed your affair, I had a lawyer draft the papers and send them to your girlfriend.
Wait, compensation? Are you saying you're going to charge me too?
Of course. As soon as I said that, Megan butted in.
Wait a minute, Rebecca. Compensation? Isn't that a bit harsh? I mean, Ryan was mentally struggling after losing his job. And you were so caught up in childbirth and taking care of the baby. Don't you think you share some of the blame?
That was enough to push me over the edge. Oh, I'll tell you exactly why I was so caught up in childbirth and taking care of the baby. It's because not a single person in this household lifted a damn finger to help me. No matter what excuses you make, a man who abandons his wife after she gives birth and goes off to fool around with another woman is a failure, both as a husband and as a father. Asking for compensation is completely justified. Or, are you and Steve planning to pay me in his place?
No, I mean, that's impossible. Steve is about to retire soon.
Hearing that, Steve turned to Ryan and exploded.
Ryan, you disgrace to this family. How the hell do you plan to take responsibility for this?
Ryan let out a pathetic squeal and instinctively took a step back. I'm leaving this house today. I'll have the divorce papers sent to you later. After saying everything I needed to, I took the bags I had packed in advance, picked up my child, and left the house with Kate and Maddie. A few days later, I officially divorced Ryan through my lawyer. Of course, I demanded compensation, and he had no choice but to pay. Considering he was unemployed, coming up with the money must have been a nightmare for him. But that wasn't my problem. With Steve retiring, he likely had to borrow from his father's retirement funds, and whatever was missing, he probably took out in loans. In other words, all three of them in that house were now unemployed. They had the nerve to call me a useless wife, yet now the whole family was jobless. If anyone in that house was actually useless, it was them. As for Ryan, after more than a month of living a carefree, jobless life, he struggled to get back into the workforce. It seems he got too comfortable doing nothing. Falling into bad habits is scary. Meanwhile, Megan was now stuck doing all the household chores she used to dump on me. The stress must have been too much for her because she spent her days belting out that terrible singing voice of hers. As expected, the neighbors complained again, but this time, there was no one to blame it on. And so,
Everyone finally realized that Megan was the real culprit all along. Now, the in-laws' house is known around the neighborhood as the House of the Singing Monster. Well, good for her. At least she's well known now, though no one from the neighborhood ever visits anymore. After leaving that house, I stayed at my parents' place with my daughter for a while. My parents welcomed us warmly and told us we could stay as long as we needed, but I knew I couldn't rely on them forever. I wanted to raise my daughter properly on my own. So I got a job at a travel agency, found a daycare, and when my daughter turned 1, I rented an apartment near my parents' house. I planned to manage things on my own as much as possible, but whenever I needed help, I knew I could count on my parents. Little by little, I got used to our new life. One day, while shopping at the grocery store after picking up my daughter from daycare, I spotted a familiar face. It was Megan. She was at the deli counter, sticking discount stickers on prepackaged food. She looked noticeably older, her skin lacking its previous glow, and she seemed more worn out than before. Yet, the fact that she had to work meant Ryan still hadn't managed to find a stable job. Well, that's just the result of their own parenting, isn't it? I didn't say a word to Megan. I just finished my shopping quietly and left the store. A few years later, today is my daughter's preschool sports day. Even though I'm a single mom, my parents being nearby to support us has helped my daughter grow into a bright and energetic child. During a race at school, she came in first place and shouted excitedly, "Mom! Did you see that? I won!" She was beaming with pride. Watching her grow and thrive, I know I'll continue doing my best for her happiness, now and always. Isabella collapsed. Is she really okay? My voice trembled with panic as I clutched my phone, my heart racing at the unexpected call from her school. The crisp autumn morning had suddenly turned into a nightmare. I don't know details yet, Mrs. Parker. The swimming instructor said she had some kind of panic attack when approaching the pool. The teacher's voice was steady but concerned. My precious daughter Isabella had gone into hyperventilation during her swimming class and was rushed to Boston Children's Hospital. I abandoned my marketing presentation mid-slide and took the first taxi I could flag down. When I finally reached her hospital room, she was peacefully asleep. I was relieved to see her chest rise and fall regularly. "Audrey, how is she? What happened?" Maxwell burst into the room, his usually immaculate suit wrinkled from rushing over. His eyes darted between Isabella and me, demanding answers. "She's resting comfortably now. Please don't worry," the doctor interjected with practiced calm, though I noticed the subtle tension in his expression. "Doctor, I need to know everything. What exactly happened to my daughter?" I pressed, my marketing executive persona taking over as I tried to maintain composure. The doctor adjusted his glasses thoughtfully before asking, "Could you tell me about Isabella's relationship with her grandparents?" "I don't understand the relevance," I replied, caught off guard by this seemingly unrelated question. "I'm specifically interested in knowing how she interacts with them on a daily basis," he clarified, choosing his words with careful precision. The unexpected line of questioning left me stunned, my mind racing to understand the connection. "Hey doctor, that's enough. Stop making baseless assumptions about my parents." Maxwell's voice thundered through the room, his face flushed with rage. I watched as the veins on his temples pulsed visibly, a warning sign I'd learned to recognize over our years together. "What's gotten into you?" I whispered, startled by this uncharacteristic outburst from my typically controlled husband. The doctor took a deep breath and looked stern. Then I should explain my concerns. What followed would shatter my understanding of our family dynamic forever. "My name is Audrey Parker, 42 years old, and I'm the marketing manager at a leading tech firm in Boston. Our household consists of 5 people. Myself, my husband Maxwell, who's a senior executive, our 4th grade daughter Isabella, and Maxwell's parents, Theodore and Victoria Reed. We used to live separately in a modern apartment complex downtown.
My career was thriving, but the demands of my position meant frequent late nights at the office. Maxwell, with his executive role, was equally consumed by work. His parents had always emphasized academic excellence, and that drive carried into his professional life. He was constantly pushing for the next promotion and achievement. Even at home, he would sequester himself in his home office, laptop glowing into the early hours. I feel guilty about Isabella, I confessed one evening, watching her eat dinner alone again. We have everything we need financially, but she seems so isolated. That's when Maxwell made his proposal. Actually, Audrey, what if we moved in with my parents? They've been suggesting it for months now. Theodore Reed had been a distinguished executive at one of the largest trading firms in Boston, while Victoria had taught at an exclusive private school until Maxwell was born. Theodore was recently forced into early retirement due to his deteriorating health. Victoria transitioned to part-time consulting work after Theodore's retirement, while Maxwell and I provided substantial monthly support to maintain their lifestyle. I've been looking into renovating their house in Brookline, Maxwell continued, spreading out architectural plans. We could create 2 separate living spaces while staying connected. The area would be better for Isabella, I agreed, picturing the tree-lined streets and prestigious schools. More space, better environment than our current situation downtown. We spent our evenings analyzing the logistics after Isabella was asleep, finally presenting our decision to Victoria during a video call. We've thought it through carefully. What do you think about this, Victoria? We'd be delighted. We've been hoping to suggest this arrangement ourselves. Having you propose it is such a relief. Victoria's refined voice carried genuine warmth through the phone. The transition proceeded efficiently, like one of Maxwell's well-executed business plans. The renovation transformed the stately Brookline house into 2 distinct living spaces, the first floor for Theodore and Victoria, our family taking the second. We opted against installing locks between the floors to maintain an open family dynamic, though we established clear boundaries about personal space. The arrangement seemed perfect. Isabella could enjoy dinner with her grandparents on the first floor during our late nights at the office. Yet each morning as I rushed out to catch the commuter train, guilt gnawed at me for relying so heavily on them. I really appreciate you both looking after Isabella while we're working, I said one morning, watching Victoria help her pack her school bag. They had taken charge of Isabella's homework supervision completely. It's our pleasure, Victoria assured me with her teacher's smile. Don't give it another thought, Audrey. Isabella is everything to us, Theodore added with what seemed like forced cheerfulness. Isabella, listen to what Grandma says. Okay, Mom. All right then, I'm heading out. See you later. Having such accomplished in-laws supporting us gave me the confidence to focus on my career advancement. 3 months into our new living arrangement, I managed to leave the office early, arriving home while the autumn sun still painted the windows gold. Isabella came running the moment I opened the door, throwing herself into my arms with tears streaming down her face. Sweetheart, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Isabella just buried her face deeper into my blazer, refusing to look up. Victoria appeared behind her, explaining smoothly. She's just overwhelmed with joy at seeing you home early. When Victoria reached to pat Isabella's head, my daughter jerked away violently. Victoria's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Isabella, darling, that's not appropriate behavior. Grandma spends hours helping you with your studies. It hurts me when you act this way. She's probably just going through that phase where she craves parental attention. Isn't that right, Isabella? I'm sorry for disappointing you. My voice wavered with uncertainty. No need to worry. Victoria maintained her composure, though strain showed around her eyes. Isabella was excelling in her studies just moments ago. She's such a bright girl. When Victoria attempted another gentle pat, Isabella recoiled so sharply it made me gasp. Isabella, apologize to your grandma right now, I snapped, embarrassed by her behavior. Isabella turned slowly, her voice barely a whisper as she said, I'm sorry, Grandma. Isabella had always been close to her grandparents, so I dismissed her behavior as simple resistance to studying, perhaps wanting to play instead. I should be the one apologizing, Isabella, Victoria said softly. I caught a glimpse of moisture in Victoria's eyes, but she quickly laughed it off, dabbing at her face. Just some dust, nothing more. As weeks passed, I began noticing subtler changes in both Victoria and Isabella's behavior. While Isabella had always been introverted, preferring books to playmates, she had never shown such emotional dependence on me before. Her apparent aversion to her grandmother's touch, the same woman who had always showered her with affection, seemed particularly troubling. That night, after tucking Isabella in, I broached the subject with Maxwell in our bedroom. Maybe I should scale back at my work, spend more time with Isabella. She seems to need more parental presence. We've been over this repeatedly. Maxwell's voice carried an edge. My parents are more than capable of handling Isabella's care. That's what we agreed upon. I understand they're capable, but they can't substitute for her mom, I argued, my MBA-trained mind seeking compromise. Maxwell's face darkened, his jaw tightening. A warning sign I knew too well. Are you implying my parents are inadequate? That's not what I meant at all. The matter is settled. My parents will continue overseeing Isabella's care. He cut me off decisively, rolling over in our king-sized bed, effectively ending the discussion. As winter settled over Boston, my workload finally lightened. Let me handle the dishes tonight. Get some rest. Really? After your long day at the office? Things are slower now. I can manage more household tasks on my days off. If you insist, I'll catch up on some reading. I threw myself into domestic duties, trying to compensate for my previous absences. Maxwell maintained his usual grueling schedule. Since Audrey's picking up the slack around here, I'll take care of Isabella's bath time. Are you sure? You must be exhausted, I said, surprised by Maxwell's offer of help. I've got this. Father-daughter bonding is essential, he declared with an air of authority. Isabella, honey, go take your shower with Daddy. I watched them head upstairs, feeling a warmth of gratitude for Maxwell's involvement. When Isabella emerged from the bathroom, my maternal instincts flared. Isabella, your face is so flushed. Are you feeling all right? Her cheeks were bright red, but she wouldn't meet my eyes, instead glancing anxiously at Maxwell while remaining silent. Sweetheart, why so quiet? I asked. The hot water probably ran a bit long. She's just overheated, Maxwell explained smoothly. Are you sure you're okay? I pressed, but Isabella only looked at Maxwell before nodding mechanically, murmuring, I'm fine, Mom. From that evening on, Maxwell insisted on supervising Isabella's shower time, despite his demanding schedule. Yet each night, she emerged with that same concerning flush. I said, maybe we should have her checked by a pediatrician? Then Maxwell said, you're being paranoid. Isabella, you're fine, aren't you? Nothing hurts, right? I'm okay. There, you see? Stop overthinking everything, Audrey. Maxwell chuckled, but something in his laugh made my skin crawl. I was blind then to the trauma unfolding beneath our roof. Summer returned to Boston, bringing with it the start of swim classes at Isabella's private school. She was a good swimmer and looked forward to this time of year every year. Today's your first swim class, Isabella. You love these sessions. Isabella replied, yeah, I guess. Think you still remember all your strokes from last year? She gave a small nod. Maybe. Something was off that morning. Isabella, who once couldn't wait for summer, sat quietly picking at her breakfast, not a single smile crossing her face. Initially, I attributed it to first-day jitters, but studying her expression more closely, I recognized raw fear in her eyes. Sweetheart, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Mom. Please don't worry, Isabella replied, her attempt at a smile more like a grimace. If you're not feeling, I can call the school. You don't have to go to school today. I'll be fine. Just go to work, Mom. All right then. Have a good day, honey. Bye, Mom. Isabella's forced smile haunted me as I drove to work. She's in good hands. Victoria and Theodore will watch out for her. I reassured myself, turning my attention to my morning meetings. During lunch, my assistant burst into the conference room with a face pale. Audrey, an emergency call from Brookline Academy. Isabella had a panic attack during swim class. They've rushed her to Children's Hospital. What? Isabella? My coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor. Go, Audrey, now! My CEO's voice cut through my shock. I barely remember the taxi ride, my trembling fingers dialing Maxwell's number. Isabella collapsed. What happened? Is she all right? I told him. I don't know the details. The swimming instructor said she had some kind of panic attack at the pool's edge. He raised his voice and said, the school didn't monitor the students properly. If anything happens to her, I will sue them legally. That's not important right now. I'm heading to the hospital. Meet me there. On my way. For once, Maxwell's razor-sharp focus on corporate success gave way to genuine paternal concern. The pediatric ward was eerily quiet when I arrived. Isabella lay peacefully in the hospital bed, her face finally serene in sleep. Thank God she's safe. I almost collapsed on the spot with relief. Careful there, her doctor steadied me as the room began to spin. Audrey, how is she? Maxwell appeared, still in his business suit. Words failed me. Your daughter is resting comfortably, the doctor interjected calmly. Thank you for everything, doctor. I thanked him with tears of relief. But the doctor's grave expression stopped my gratitude short. Mrs. Parker, there's something we need to discuss. What is it? What's wrong? Well, the doctor hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Please, tell me everything. What did you find? Terror gripped me. Was there some underlying condition we'd missed? Could you tell me about Isabella's daily interactions with her grandparents? He asked delicately. I don't understand. What do you mean? The question seemed to come from left field. I'm specifically interested in the nature of their relationship. They're very close, but why are you asking? Confusion gave way to creeping dread as I pondered the doctor's careful questioning. What could possibly be happening between Isabella and her grandparents that would concern a medical professional? As I hesitated to answer, Maxwell erupted behind me. What exactly are you implying, doctor? His rage was palpable, a vein pulsing dangerously at his temple. Maxwell, please, I whispered, unnerved by this uncharacteristic loss of control from my usually composed husband. How dare you cast aspersions on my parents? I'm simply gathering information for Isabella's care, the doctor explained calmly. Maxwell advanced toward the doctor's desk, his expensive leather shoes clicking ominously on the hospital floor. The doctor remained steady, maintaining professional composure. My parents are pillars of the Brookline community. Make any more unfounded accusations and you'll be hearing from our attorneys. Let's stay focused on Isabella's well-being. Focused? You're attacking my family's reputation. Please help me understand why these questions upset you so much. The doctor removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes wearily. Here's what concerns me. He explained that when Isabella was brought in, she had been in a severe panic state. As they tried to help her at poolside, she became hysterical about entering the water. But it was what happened in the ambulance that raised red flags. Even through her hyperventilation, Isabella had been muttering frantically. The EMTs reported she kept repeating, "I'm sorry, Grandma. I'm sorry, Grandpa," over and over in a dissociative state. When a child apologizes to specific family members during a trauma response, it often indicates an underlying situation. What's really happening between Isabella and her grandparents? The question hit me like a physical blow. I don't understand, I stammered, but my eyes were drawn to Maxwell's increasingly agitated state. You're hiding something, aren't you? I challenged him, my marketing instincts picking up on his tells. This is absurd. My parents would never, they couldn't. Maxwell's laughter held an edge of hysteria. I'm simply reporting my medical observations. I haven't made any accusations about your parents. The pattern is clear now. Given these concerns, I've initiated a report with Child Protective Services. Maxwell shouted. You had no right. Actually, I have both a legal and ethical obligation, the doctor corrected firmly. Our heated exchange must have disturbed Isabella as her eyes fluttered open. Mommy? Isabella, sweetheart. I rushed to embrace her, feeling her small body trembling. She can be discharged now, the doctor informed us, prompting Maxwell to snarl. Damn right she can. Come on, Isabella. We're leaving now. He grabbed her arm roughly. Get your hands off her. I yanked Isabella away instinctively, shocking myself with the force of my protective response. The air crackled with tension, but Isabella's safety was all that mattered. In the back of the Uber, Maxwell wouldn't stop. "That doctor's a fraud. He's just trying to destroy my family's reputation." I remained silent and let my thoughts run over in my head. "What? Do you believe that doctor, too?" I asked Isabella slowly. "Isabella, have your grandparents been hurting you?" "No, they haven't." Then Maxwell said, "You see? This whole thing is ridiculous." Isabella's denial rang hollow, her voice quavering under Maxwell's intimidating presence. Watching her shrink into herself, my mind raced through possible scenarios of what might have transpired with her grandparents. Whatever had traumatized my daughter so severely, she'd been too terrified to confide in me. The doctor's decision to contact Child Protective Services wasn't made lightly. He must have seen serious warning signs. But confronting Victoria and Theodore directly would be futile. Without concrete evidence, it would be their word against a frightened child's. "Are you listening to me at all?" Maxwell's sharp voice cut through my thoughts. "Sorry, what?" I said. "If CPS shows up, don't let them in. If there's nothing to hide, why not cooperate and clear everything up?" I challenged, knowing it was futile. "Are you insane? Do you know what an investigation would do to my reputation? Use your head." Maxwell had been groomed for success since his childhood, graduating from elite schools straight into executive positions. His carefully cultivated image meant everything to him. I watched him ranting about his career prospects and wondered, when had his professional reputation become more important than our daughter's welfare? My gaze drifted to the Uber's dash cam, triggering a crucial memory. There was something I hadn't told Maxwell or his parents. The next morning, I maintained a facade of normalcy, submitted a week of emergency paid time off, spent several hours at my college roommate's place to establish an alibi, then waited outside Isabella's school. "Isabella, over here." Her face lit up with relief when she saw me. "Mom? What's going on?" "I'll explain everything soon. We're catching a flight." We took a series of buses to Logan International and boarded a plane to my parents' home in Seattle. All night, Maxwell's calls flooded my phone. Finally, exhausted by the constant ringing, I answered. "What the hell are you doing? Where's Isabella?" "Somewhere safe, where you can't reach her." "Have you lost your mind?" "Come back and we'll discuss this rationally," I answered. "We're not coming back." "Fine, explain over the phone then. But send Isabella back immediately." His voice thundered through the speaker. "Absolutely not," he said in an irritated tone. "Why are you doing this to us? If you've really forgotten, let me remind you, you and your parents have been terrorizing our daughter day after day." Years of suppressed rage burst forth as I methodically laid out the evidence. The Uber's dash cam had reminded me of the security system I'd installed on the first floor, originally to monitor Theodore's health issues. The cameras were programmed to alert my phone to any unusual activity. The surveillance revealed a pattern. Victoria and Theodore had full access to Isabella whenever we were at work. What started as Victoria forcing Isabella to perform household chores escalated quickly. I'd initially rationalized it as teaching responsibility, but the footage showed Victoria never instructing, just watching with Theodore as Isabella worked. The security footage played out like a horror movie. Isabella, diligently completing each task, would try to retreat upstairs only to be called back by Victoria's deceptively gentle voice. "Now, please clean the master bathroom." "But Grandma, I have a math test tomorrow." "I'm so sorry, dear, but you must do as you're told. If you can't follow our rules, we can't continue this living arrangement. It's for your own good, Isabella." Victoria's manicured hand gripped Isabella's wrist, dragging her toward the bathroom. "Do as you're told, Isabella." Victoria's cultured voice came through crystal clear on the high-end security system, her tone dripping with false concern. "Grandpa, please help me." Isabella's desperate plea to Theodore went unanswered as he sat in his leather armchair, passively watching the scene unfold. I felt physically ill watching the footage. This systematic abuse had been happening daily while I was closing deals at the office. My in-laws, pillars of Boston society, were tormenting my child behind closed doors. I kept the surveillance system secret but confronted Maxwell with the evidence of his parents' abuse. His response chilled me. So the little ingrate talked after all that discipline? Wasn't the lesson enough? You orchestrated this whole thing. What are you saying? I only mentioned your parents' actions. You manipulated me. You're despicable. Despicable? You're terrorizing our fourth-grade daughter. Suddenly, Maxwell's insistence on supervising Isabella's showers made horrifying sense. I know what you've been doing at her shower. Though I lacked proof, I had to confront him. It's educational discipline. She was getting complacent about her grades. She needed motivation to excel. Educational? She's traumatized. I simply made her recite multiplication tables until she got them perfect. The hot water was encouragement. Your outburst at the hospital wasn't about protecting your parents, was it? You were terrified of being exposed for coercing them into this abuse. That's why you're so desperate to keep CPS away. The security footage had caught Maxwell threatening Theodore and Victoria. They weren't willing participants in Isabella's torment. The constant red face after showers. He'd been holding her under hot water until she performed to his standards. The trauma turned her fear of water into a phobia, culminating in today's panic attack at the pool. You've robbed her of something she loved. So what? You can't possibly understand the pressure. You'll never understand. My dad was an executive in a major corporation, and my mom was an acclaimed educator. 1B+, and I'd face their disappointment. That crushing pressure. I won't let Isabella experience that misery. My methods are protection, preparation for the real world. His laughter turned maniacal. When my dad's health declined and he needed my help, it was time for me to take my revenge. I finally held power over them. Moving in together came with conditions. They had to push Isabella like they pushed me. That was our deal. Horror washed over me as Maxwell revealed his warped psychology. I've recorded every word of your confession, and the security footage shows you intimidating your parents into compliance. The evidence will protect Isabella from you. Wait, Audrey, we can work this out. Maxwell's voice edged toward panic. But I ended the call and blocked his number without another word. I presented the police and Child Protective Services with a comprehensive case, security footage, recorded confessions, and medical documentation from the hospital. The evidence is irrefutable, the detective assured me, immediately initiating an investigation. But the most devastating revelation came from Isabella herself when I asked why she'd suffered in silence. Through tears, she whispered, "Daddy said if I didn't meet his standards, he'd do the same things to you." I couldn't let him hurt you, Mom. My 10-year-old daughter had endured trauma to protect me. While I was chasing my career success, she was shielding me from her dad's abuse. What kind of mother am I? I pulled her close, my own tears falling. I'm so sorry, Isabella. I failed you. No, Mom. You rescued me. Her small arms wrapped around me, and I wept harder. I will always protect you, Isabella. You're the most precious thing in my life. I promise you'll never face anything like this again. The vow burned itself into my soul. The evidence proved overwhelming. Maxwell was arrested and charged with child abuse, while Theodore and Victoria were treated as coerced participants rather than willing perpetrators. Several months later, Theodore and Victoria appeared at my parents' Seattle home, looking frail and aged beyond their years. Audrey and Isabella. We can never adequately express our remorse. We were weak. We knew it was wrong but couldn't stand against Maxwell. We failed as grandparents in every way. Theodore and Victoria, the security footage shows clearly how Maxwell coerced you. Part of me wanted to blame them for their passive compliance, but I knew that wouldn't heal anything. Theodore struggled to maintain his formal posture despite his illness, his distinguished face contorted with shame. Regardless of the threats, we participated in traumatizing our precious granddaughter. We don't seek forgiveness. We just needed to apologize in person to you both. Perhaps selfishly, we needed this closure. Isabella approached them hesitantly, then gently touched their shoulders. Grandma and Grandpa, I don't hate you. Thank you for helping me with my studies. Her words of grace shattered what remained of their composure. They couldn't lift their faces, as if unworthy to look at their granddaughter. Though Isabella invited them to visit, they never returned. 5 years have passed. Isabella is now thriving in middle school, and we live with my parents in Seattle's Queen Anne district. My company created a remote position allowing me to work primarily from home. Though the police maintain a watchful eye for Maxwell, I still sometimes feel anxious. I've installed state-of-the-art security systems and taken self-defense classes. I personally handle all school drop-offs and pickups. Gradually, Isabella's natural joy has reemerged. She's taken to helping my dad tend his extensive rose garden. Grandpa, come see these heritage roses blooming. They're stunning, Isabella. Should we make a bouquet for your mom's desk? Yes, let's surprise her. My parents have found new vitality in their role as Isabella's protectors. Just as she once shielded me, I'll dedicate my life to safeguarding her happiness. Watching her laugh among the roses, I renew this vow daily.
You don't suit that dress anymore with your hairstyle.
The one crying is my daughter, Jessica. And the one who looks so happy looking at Jessica is my brother's wife, Hannah. She did something this awful to my precious Jessica.
I'll take that dress.
Hurting someone just to steal what belongs to them. How is this person even family? I won't forgive her. I'll fight her with everything I have. It's time to show her a mother's strength. I'm Michelle, a 47-year-old housewife. My husband and I have one daughter, Jessica, who is graduating from high school this year. Lately, I've had something on my mind. I try not to let it bother me, but the more I ignore it, the bigger it seems to get. The source of my stress is Hannah, my younger brother's wife. Hannah is a 40-year-old hairdresser. My brother, feeling pressured to get married, jumped into a speed dating event and met her there. As soon as they got married, she decided she wanted kids and started trying really hard to get pregnant. She even cut back to a part-time job for it. My brother is 37, so she's 3 years older than him. Maybe that's why she's so determined to have a baby. Whether or not she can have a baby is a sensitive issue, and it's not something our family has any say in. So, I've decided to stay out of it completely. But if I'm being honest, I'd rather not deal with Hannah at all. Since Hannah started working part-time and had more free time, she began showing up at our house constantly, uninvited and definitely not welcome. And her attitude and behavior are so childish that it makes me uncomfortable.
Michelle, isn't Jessica home yet?
Oh, right. She's been busy with school and her part-time job. On a weekday in the middle of the day, Hannah suddenly visited and relaxed in my house, and she kept asking me when Jessica was coming home.
I get along so well with young people. At work, I'm always surrounded by new hires, and I totally fit right in. When I tell them I'm 40, they get so shocked.
Oh, well, Hannah, you're stylish and look young.
Oh, stop it, Michelle. You're flattering me too much. I mean, I know I don't look like a teenager or anything.
I never said she looked like a teenager. Hannah was grinning and chattering so excitedly that I couldn't even be bothered to call her out on it. She started bragging about how she hangs out with teenagers as if she's on the same level as them. Honestly, I couldn't understand why someone nearing their 40s would spend most of their time with teenage coworkers and their friends. But, well, she's my brother's wife, so I just let it go. While she kept talking, Jessica finally came home.
Oh, welcome back, Jessica.
Oh, Hannah, you're here.
Hannah greeted Jessica and approached her. Jessica was clearly taken aback and instinctively pulled away, but that didn't stop Hannah. She kept talking nonstop, completely overwhelming both of us.
Oh my gosh, Jessica. Your earrings are adorable. Did your boyfriend get them for you? So cute.
Oh no, I bought these myself.
Oh wow. So jealous. Must be nice to have all your paycheck to yourself since you're a student. I wish I could get those earrings too, but I can't. I have to save for fertility treatments and help with the bills. Oh, those earrings are so cute.
For Hannah, saying, "I'm so jealous," is like reaching the peak of a mountain. The path she takes may vary from day to day, but she always gets there in the end. Compared to this habit of hers, her constant chattering and trying to act younger almost seem like minor quirks. She always had to go on and on about how jealous she was, to the point where it became exhausting. That day, her "I'm so jealous" had no end. She started with Jessica's earrings, then moved on to her clothes, her nails, and even my skincare products. She kept prying for details, only to sigh and say, "Oh, must be nice," or "I can't afford that." Having someone constantly envious of you is surprisingly exhausting.
Oh wow, those cookies from that shop are so good. They are amazing. So jealous. I want some too. Maybe I should stop by and grab a tin on my way home. But a whole tin for just me is too much.
Just as I thought Hannah's one-woman show had finally taken a break, she suddenly spotted the cookie tin sitting on our kitchen shelf and let out a dramatic sigh. She stared at it so longingly that even my polite smile was starting to wear thin. Still, I forced myself to keep up appearances. "Why don't you split it with my brother? We got these as a gift, and the three of us have been sharing them."
But I should be saving money since I'm trying so hard to get pregnant. That shop is amazing, but it's pretty pricey. Oh, I really want a cookie. So jealous.
Once Hannah reaches the peak of her "so jealous" mountain, she doesn't come down for a while. This is exhausting. I can't give her my earrings, clothes, or skincare products, but maybe I should just let her have some cookies. Actually, if I give her some, maybe she'll finally leave me alone. That's how relentless she was. And once again, her tantrum wins. "All right, why don't we all have some now? Go ahead."
No way. Are you sure? I'd feel bad.
Even as she pretended to hesitate, Hannah ignored the plate I offered and grabbed the entire cookie tin instead, devouring the cookies at an alarming speed.
Wow, that was delicious. These sweets are always amazing.
Jessica and I just stood there, speechless. Between the two of us, we only got one or two. Hannah ate the rest. And this is the same person who said earlier that she couldn't finish a whole tin by herself. We just sat there in stunned silence. Oblivious to our confusion, Hannah, now full and in a great mood, suddenly perked up as if she had found her next target.
Jessica's dress photos. You did a pre-prom shoot? Oh my gosh, that dress is adorable.
Only complimenting the dress. How rude. Excited, Hannah grabbed the framed pre-prom photo of Jessica from the living room shelf and stared at it.
So jealous. I want to wear a dress like that too.
"Well, what kind of dress did you wear to your prom, Hannah?" It had been over 20 years since her prom. I wasn't exactly eager to ask, but since she kept going on and on about the dress, I felt obligated to acknowledge it. Hannah pouted, looking dissatisfied.
I had to rent my prom dress. Back when I was young, it was all about going all out. I went crazy with my hair and everything. But seeing Jessica's dress, I kinda wish I had gone for a classy look instead.
My parents had this dress custom made for me. I love how elegant it turned out.
Since Jessica is our only daughter, my husband and I had both agreed we wanted to help her find the perfect dress, something she truly loved. Jessica visited the boutique multiple times before finally deciding on the perfect fabric. Of course, it was expensive, but it was definitely worth it. Hannah clutched the photo frame, staring at Jessica's picture with an oddly dissatisfied look on her face.
But doesn't your hair color match this pretty dress?
Well, I think it looks fine, but I was planning to get my hair freshly dyed before prom anyway.
Jessica has a hairstyle in her mind. She's been growing her hair out for 3 years just so she can put it up.
I want my prom look to be a little different from the pre-shoot, so I'm going to get my hair styled in an elegant updo.
Jessica was really looking forward to getting her hair done for prom. She had taken great care of it and had been patiently growing it out for the past 3 years. She was so excited now that it had finally reached the perfect length. Even though prom was still a while away, as her mother, I couldn't help but feel emotional remembering how she looked when she first started growing it out. Jessica chatted happily, smiling, but Hannah just nodded absent-mindedly, clearly uninterested.
Well, never mind Jessica's plans. I want to wear this dress too. I never had a wedding, so maybe I should put it on and take some pictures with my husband.
What? As Jessica and I froze, still forcing smiles, Hannah confidently clenched her fists in excitement.
Isn't this trending lately? Wearing the dress you had made when you were young and taking bridal photos. So romantic, right? My parents would probably get emotional seeing the pictures too.
Well, but isn't the whole point that you take pictures in a dress you actually had made when you were younger? You've never worn this one before. Wouldn't make more sense to rent a dress in a similar color?
But I don't have money for that. That's why I never had a wedding in the first place. I at least want to take pictures in a dress I love. This is perfect. I'll just borrow it today.
But this dress was custom made for Jessica, and she hasn't even worn it to prom yet. Lending it out for someone else's photo shoot before then just doesn't seem right. Also, wouldn't the sleeves be way too long? You and Jessica have pretty different heights. Hannah hadn't even asked us if she could borrow it. She was simply declaring that she would. Besides, Hannah is not that tall, but rather short. Jessica is taller than average, so the dress was tailored specifically for her height and arm length. That means it would be way too big for Hannah.
It's fine. I'll be super careful, and I can figure out the sleeves. I mean, can't I just sew them a little? I can totally do that myself.
She casually blurted out something outrageous. Sewing a delicate, embroidered dress herself, yeah, there's no way I'm letting her borrow it. Jessica and I exchanged a look and nodded in agreement.
I don't like this idea either. My parents let me take my time choosing the fabric I loved, and they had this dress made just for me. Hannah, you should either rent one yourself or talk to my uncle about buying one.
Jessica looked a bit nervous, but she clearly expressed her feelings. Even in the face of her serious stance, Hannah frowned, twisting her mouth and eyebrows in dissatisfaction.
But if I borrow it from you, it's free, and I can take it home right now. I can get my hair done at my salon. Ask my friend with a professional camera to take photos in a nice park. Everything would be free. It's the perfect plan. All you have to do is say yes, Jessica.
She really didn't seem to understand that we were uncomfortable with this. Honestly, it was shocking that a 40-year-old woman was this obsessed with getting everything for free. I looked straight at Hannah with a serious expression, making sure she clearly understood that we were saying no. Hannah, I hate to say this, but the dress was custom made for Jessica. Honestly, it was quite expensive. It's not something that can just be tossed in the wash. If something happened to it after lending it to you, it would strain our relationship, don't you think? I can't let you borrow it. I hope you understand.
Oh, I see.
Hannah pouted, but nodded, at least for the moment. But just as I started to feel relieved, her eyes suddenly lit up.
Oh, then just show it to me. You have it here, right?
Oh, I guess so. She was pushing hard.
The urge fell from the top.
As I hesitantly pulled the dress out of the wardrobe, feeling pressured by her insistence, I suddenly heard her mutter something. Did you say something?
Oh no, nothing. Wow, what a gorgeous dress. So jealous.
She stared at the dress for a while, scrutinizing every detail, then, for some reason, took multiple photos of it. But that day, she left quietly without further demands. After that, I completely forgot that Hannah had set her sights on the dress. I had no idea that my lack of caution would lead to such a disaster. About a week after Hannah had asked to borrow the dress, something unusual happened. She didn't visit our house even once that week. I started to relax, thinking maybe she had lost interest. It was a peaceful day as usual, and I was expecting Jessica to come home soon since she didn't have work that evening. Just then, I got a text from her.
Hannah asked if she could practice dyeing hair on me, so I said yes.
Well, that's unexpected. Hannah, who's always asking for things, is actually offering something instead. Maybe she felt guilty about always mooching off us. I would soon regret giving her even a shred of credit.
Hello, I brought Jessica back.
About 3 hours later, I suddenly heard Hannah's cheerful voice at my front door. She even gave Jessica a ride home. As I rushed to the door in surprise, I was met with a shocking sight. Jessica, your hair. Jessica's hair had been cut into a short bob and dyed an unnaturally glossy, almost metallic-looking black. Moreover, her hair was messily cut and uneven. Jessica was face down and kept weeping.
Doesn't Jessica look adorable with this new hairstyle?
What? Hannah, did you cut Jessica's hair? What the hell were you thinking? I told you before. Jessica has been growing it out for 3 years for prom.
Oh yeah, I knew that. But once I started dyeing it, I thought shorter would suit her better, so I just went for it. She suddenly got mad, so I had to hurry up and finish.
Hannah laughed, completely unbothered. As I stood there trembling with rage, unable to find the words, Jessica let out a choked sob.
This is the worst. I spent years growing my hair out for the dress.
Hearing her voice, my heart shattered. How could she? She did something irreversible and is standing there laughing. I will never forgive her. If Jessica can't fight for herself, then as her mother, I will. I glared at Hannah, ready to unleash my fury. But before I could say anything, she suddenly shoved past me and barged into the house.
Jessica's hairstyle doesn't match that dress anymore. It'd be a shame to waste such a beautiful dress, so I'll take it instead.
Before I could react, Hannah sprinted straight into the room where Jessica's dress was kept, yanked it out of the wardrobe, and bolted toward the door at lightning speed. Stop! What do you think you're doing? I ran after her to stop her, but Hannah was shockingly fast. She bolted out the front door, jumped into her car in an instant, and sped off before I could catch her. Hey, somebody help! She's stealing! I ran barefoot into the street, screaming for help. At this point, she wasn't family. She was just a thief. But her car kept getting farther away.
Mom, wait.
Just as I was about to chase after her, Jessica grabbed my arm. But Hannah she took the dress. Just as I turned to Jessica in confusion, a sudden loud crash echoed through the air, the direction Hannah had driven off in. I spun around, and there it was. Her car had slammed into a utility pole. The hood was bent out of shape, though the damage wasn't severe enough to shatter the windshield. Cautiously, I hurried over and saw Hannah standing outside her car, completely stunned as she stared at the accident. The dress. There it is. It's safe. I frantically grabbed the dress from the back seat. The dress, still wrapped in its bag, seemed to be intact, but something was strange. Why is it making noise? A shrill electronic beeping was coming from inside the dress bag. As I stood there confused, Hannah suddenly snapped out of her daze and exploded with rage, kicking her car.
What the hell did you do to me? The dress started blaring out of nowhere, and when I reached back to turn it off, I crashed. You owe me. Pay for my repairs and compensation.
Her voice was nothing like the whiny, carefree tone she usually used. It was sharp, aggressive, almost threatening. Jessica, who had caught up to me, shouted back.
Compensation? You crashed the car yourself.
It wasn't my fault. If your damn dress hadn't started blaring, I would have been able to focus on driving. And why the hell was it making noise in the first place?
I put an alarm security tag inside it. You always obsess over other people's things and whine until you get them. But you gave up on the dress surprisingly fast. And since you took a suspicious number of photos, I knew you were planning something. That's why I set up a security tag.
Jessica tapped on her phone. The beeping sound from the dress immediately stopped. I was completely impressed by Jessica's sense of caution. Jessica, that was incredible. I didn't notice a thing.
I just couldn't stand the thought of my dress being taken away without a word.
What the hell? What about my car? You better pay for the damages. And I want compensation for emotional distress. Because of your stupid prank,
Compensation? You cut Jessica's hair without permission. Are you ready to take responsibility for that? Hannah had been trying to intimidate Jessica, but my sudden outburst made her freeze in shock. If Jessica had the courage to protect her dress, then as her mother, I need to show my strength too. You ruined my daughter's hair that she worked so hard to grow. How do you plan to fix this? I'll get a lawyer involved if I have to. I'm not letting this go just because we're family.
Wait, a lawyer?
And just a minute ago, you were talking about emotional distress, weren't you? Do you have any idea how much trauma you've caused Jessica?
I was just doing my job as a hairstylist.
Your job as a hairstylist? Don't make me laugh. You tricked her into thinking you were just dyeing her hair and then chopped it off. That's not a job. That's assault. And on top of that, you tried to steal her dress.
Shut up. Stop yelling. You're going to ruin my reputation as your brother's wife. Keep your voice down.
Because of the accident in a residential area, a crowd of neighbors had gathered to see what was happening. Hannah, realizing how many eyes were on her, started looking around anxiously, her face turning bright red.
This isn't ruining your reputation. It's the truth. You hacked up my hair and stole my dress.
Shut up.
Hannah, who had no problem being aggressive toward Jessica, was now completely unhinged. Her hair was a mess, her eyes were bloodshot, and there was nothing cute about her anymore. As Hannah kept shouting, panting with rage, Jessica and I could only stare in disbelief. Just then, a neighbor spoke up.
I called the police and an ambulance for that old woman.
Hearing the word old woman, made Hannah's expression darken even more.
Who the hell are you calling an old woman? I don't need the police or an ambulance. Stay out of this.
Don't be so ungrateful. And face it, you're not a young girl anymore. Stop trying to steal a teenager's dress.
Shut up. If Jessica looks good in it, then I will too. I take great care of my looks, and everyone tells me I don't look 40. Of course, I can pull off Jessica's dress. Don't look down on me.
Hannah screamed, glaring intensely at Jessica. Jessica, completely overwhelmed, took a step back in confusion.
I'm not looking down on you.
Yes, you are. You've always looked down on me. Always flaunting your cute clothes and accessories in front of me. And I'll say it again. If something looks good on you, it looks 100 times better on me. So don't get cocky.
It's not about what looks good on who. You clearly have a serious issue with your age. Stop trying to compete with a teenager when you're 40. There's a different kind of beauty and enjoyment that comes with being 40, don't you think? Hannah was speechless. Laughter erupted from the gathered crowd. Even I was shocked that a grown woman like Hannah had been competing with a teenager like Jessica. As she stood there, trembling with embarrassment, I pressed on. Anyway, Hannah, you've gone way too far this time. I'm going to tell my brother everything. I'd like to believe he's rational enough to see the truth about you and make the right decision.
What do you mean, the right decision?
I hope he divorces you. And if he doesn't, I'll tell him that my family will be cutting ties with both of you.
Divorce? Over this? That's ridiculous.
We'll see. As I smiled at Hannah, who had turned pale, the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. Hearing it, she flinched.
Please, don't tell him about the hair or the dress. I can't be single at 40. I don't want to be looked down on.
The only one looking down on people here is you.
If divorce is even on the table, then I'll apologize. I'll apologize to Jessica and to you as much as it takes. Just please.
Finally realizing the gravity of the situation, Hannah panicked and started desperately apologizing.
Even if you apologize, my hair won't grow back. I'll never forgive you.
Exactly. If Jessica takes this to court, you'll have a criminal record. You should be worried about more than just your marriage.
This can't be happening.
As we firmly shut her down, Hannah turned pale and collapsed to the ground. Just then, the paramedics arrived and began lifting her onto a stretcher. But as they did, she started thrashing and screaming.
Let go of me. I'm innocent. I don't know anything about the hair or the dress.
So you're still not sorry? In that case, we'll make sure to handle this properly. Prepare yourself. At my words, Hannah's eyes rolled back, and she fainted, foaming at the mouth. Well, looks like she really did need that stretcher after all. And with that, Hannah was loaded into the ambulance and taken to the hospital. Although Hannah caused an accident, she walked away without a single injury. But in the end, bad deeds always catch up with you. As expected, she was fired from the salon where she worked. The salon owner quickly found out that she had lured Jessica in under the pretense of practicing a color treatment and then butchered her hair. Hannah thought she could get away with it since she called Jessica in on the salon's day off, never considering that anyone at the shop would find out. But, of course, she was caught. Several staff members had come in on their day off to practice. She ended up cutting Jessica's hair right in front of them. Why she ever thought she could get away with it is beyond me. She always had terrible judgment. Hannah and my brother finalized their divorce. She fought it tooth and nail, refusing to be labeled a loser. But my brother was firm. He wanted nothing to do with someone who would harm his own family. In the end, she finally gave in, like an empty shell of herself. Now unemployed and single, her pride must have been shattered. But she had no time to dwell on it. Although her insurance covered the cost of the damaged utility pole, it didn't cover her car repairs. Not wanting to lose her car, Hannah paid the expensive repair costs to keep it. Even though her insurance premium skyrocketed, she just couldn't let go of things. We also decided to pursue a damages claim for what she did to Jessica's hair. Apparently, Hannah had been bragging to the salon staff about how she was doing Jessica a favor by dyeing the hair she had grown out for 3 years. It was clear that Jessica never intended to cut her hair, and that Hannah knew this. If needed, the salon staff were willing to testify. So we were confident we could demand proper compensation. Losing her job and now facing legal action, Hannah aged well beyond her years. Wanting to stay youthful is admirable, but when taken too far or fueled by insecurity, it often backfires. Hannah was a perfect example of that. As for Jessica's prom, after consulting with her usual salon about her uneven bob, they suggested a shorter hairstyle to Jessica. With the delicate lace headpiece, her new short cut gave her a modern, elegant look. Jessica ended up loving her new hairstyle, different from her pre-prom shoot. On prom night, she wore the dress we had poured our hearts into preparing, her smile shining brighter than ever. As my husband and I watched her, we reflected on the past 17 years since she was born, both of us tearing up at the sight of our beautiful daughter. Jessica had protected something precious to her with her quick thinking, and no matter what anyone says, she is my greatest pride. Seeing her standing there, radiant and confident, I knew without a doubt that no matter what challenges lie ahead, Jessica would overcome them.